On TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV. Talk TV News at 4.
Good afternoon, I'm Zora Suleiman. 2 British men who were captured by Russian forces whilst fighting in Ukraine have been sentenced to the death penalty. Aidan Aslin and Sean Pinner were detained in April. They're accused of being mercenaries, but their families insist they were in Ukraine's military. The government say they're deeply concerned. The Prime Minister insisted it's time to stop spending and start cutting taxes. Speaking in Blackpool this afternoon, Boris Johnson urged the public to pull together through the cost of living crisis and said taxes must come down. Well, it comes as the RAC says it is a truly dark day for drivers as the cost of filling an average family car with petrol has exceeded £100 for the first time ever. Well, Boris Johnson also unveiled plans to help low-income families in England get onto the property ladder. He's launched a review into better access to low-deposit mortgages. But the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says the plans don't go far enough.
The announcement today from the Prime Minister is the wrong approach. It is a reheated version of an idea that the government had back in 2015. They piloted it, it didn't work. And if ever you needed evidence that this divided government is completely out of ideas, it's this announcement today.
Fears of widespread travel chaos across the UK has now intensified after 3 more rail companies announced plans to strike later this month. Train drivers from Hull Trains, Greater Anglia and Croydon Tramlink will walk out in separate disputes over pay. It's as up to 50,000 RMT union members will stage the biggest British rail strike since 1989 at the end of June. Former Transport Secretary Norman Baker says the unions need to rethink.
What the RMT and others appear not to understand is we're in a different world. We're in a different world where the number of people travelling by train and therefore the income from the train passenger is substantially diminished as a consequence of COVID and doesn't show a sign of coming back.
Some of the world's top golfers who are playing in the controversial Saudi-backed Live Series have been suspended from the rival PGA Tour with immediate effect. In a statement from Live Golf, they said the decision is vindictive and deepens the divide between the tour and its members. It comes under fire over links to the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Saudi Arabia. And Prince Louis's adorable antics during the Platinum Jubilee has been blamed on sugar highs. In his podcast, Mike Tindall, who's married to the Queen's granddaughter Zara, revealed there were sweets everywhere during the celebrations. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge's youngest stole the hearts of the nation as he pulled naughty faces. Well, now time for today's weather.
Sunday Times Culture sponsors Talk TV weather.
Hello, I'm Nazanin Gaffer. An east-west split with the weather today. Through the night, we've seen a band of rain move its way very slowly eastwards, and through this afternoon, it will be moving into western parts of the UK. So we've seen some rain already across parts of Ireland and Northern Ireland. That rain, the cloud as well, is also creeping into western parts of Scotland, parts of Wales, the West Midlands and the West Country towards the end of today. Ahead of that, there will be a little bit of cloud building up, as you can see, across some central areas, but generally around central and eastern parts of the UK today, I think it's looking mostly fine, bright, especially around eastern parts of England and eastern Scotland. And it's feeling warm in the sunshine too, particularly down towards parts of southeast. Temperature highs locally could be around 23 to 24 degrees Celsius. So, as I said, an east-west divide for tonight, but overnight we'll continue to see that band of rain, mostly becoming light and patchy, clearing away eastwards, but it probably lingers down towards parts of the southeast. Clear spells elsewhere. And then tomorrow we see a bit of a different flavour with the weather as it becomes windy, as we see the remnants of Tropical Storm Alex approaching the northwest of the UK. That's going to bring very windy conditions across parts of the northwest. Also some showers there. But for central, southern and eastern parts of the UK, it's looking mostly fine, dry, sunny and warm.
Times Sport sponsors Talk TV weather.
The bosses at Talk TV have given me and Mike Graham our own show on Saturday nights. Why am I doing this on my own? It's because Mike Graham's late again. He's always late. I'm sick of this. I was promised Piers Morgan. Now I've got to work with Mike Graham. I've had it.
My friends, just after 4 o'clock, thank you to Ian Collins. We're live with Talk TV Drive from the Talk Radio studios, and straight to that breaking news. Two Britons, Aidan Aslin and Sean Pinner, have been sentenced to death alongside Moroccan national Saddam Brahim after appearing in court in the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic. This is held by pro-Russian rebels, not internationally recognised. Both British men are serving members of the Ukraine's armed forces, and the UK has made it clear they are prisoners of war entitled to immunity. However, they have been sentenced to death. This opens up so many questions. What does the government do? What's international law? How do we respond? Does this essentially mean that this conflict then takes on a far more personal meaning to the United Kingdom? I'm delighted to be joined now by Admiral Chris Parry, former NATO commander. Chris, good afternoon. Welcome to Talk TV Drive.
Good afternoon, Jeremy.
A lot of people over the last 100 days have said, you know, we're providing this, we're providing that. Is there ever a likelihood that we would be able, willing, or have to put boots on the ground? Does this mean, this news today, two British nationals sentenced to death by a rebel court that is not internationally recognised, is in essence this meaning that we will have to escalate our situation towards Russia in Ukraine?
No, it isn't. I think... obviously, we have to recognise that what's going on in the east of Ukraine isn't subject to the rule of law, and these are illegitimate regimes. They're rogue regimes, but they're also being steered by Russia. This is hostage diplomacy. We've seen it with Iran, recently with other people. We've seen it with China. I suspect this is a means of leveraging all sorts of concessions out of Western countries and things like that. It'd be very dangerous, I would suspect, if they did execute these men, because otherwise it would be open season on all the mercenaries that the Russians are using in Ukraine at the moment, the Syrians, the Chechens, and also the Wagner Group.
Can we talk, Chris, about that word mercenaries? I mean, yeah. I can just give you this, because this has just come in from the Prime Minister's official spokesman, breaking news. We're obviously deeply concerned by this. We've said continually that prisoners of war shouldn't be exploited for political purposes. You'll know that under the Geneva Convention, prisoners of war are entitled to combatant immunity, and they should not be prosecuted for participation in hostilities. So we will continue to work with the Ukrainian authorities to try and secure the release of any British national who was serving in the Ukrainian armed forces and who are being held as prisoners of war. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has just condemned the death sentence, handing out to the people, saying a sham judgment with absolute no legitimacy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we have to recognise here is that the Donetsk and Luhansk republics are not signatories to the Geneva Convention. So it's absolute Wild West there. But the danger for them is that all their fighters then become classified as illegal fighters committing war crimes, and they themselves, of course, become subject to the same retaliatory law. So they're standing into danger, but I don't believe that these guys will be executed. This is a negotiating ploy, like Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe was held by the Iranians.
Let's call it a negotiation ploy, and not, you're not hyping this up, but being straight with you. What if they are executed? What if, what did you call it, a rogue state, the Wild West? What if these two British nationals serving in the Ukrainian armed forces, and some would call them mercenaries, some wouldn't, what if they are executed? What does the British government do at that point?
Well, the British government, I think, will do a lot before they are executed by putting pressure on Russia, because Russia is pulling the strings in these breakaway republics. That's the first thing. Secondly, I think the government will have to say to Russia what the consequences are, and that may well be that we throw your diplomats out. It may be as extreme as that if any of our citizens are harmed. Let's be clear, these guys are part of Ukraine's armed forces. They are not mercenaries in the same way that the Russians are using their mercenary troops at the moment.
So a British serviceman, ex-serviceman, can go and serve. Let me just read a couple of messages out. Phil says, the court that has sentenced these two men to death is part of the DNPR, which is not recognized. by Ukraine or the international community. So unfortunately...
...is deter it. So I think the message we would be giving is if you're looking to get some sort of coercive action in return, then you carry on and do this. But you're standing into danger. And as I said, I think the Ukrainians themselves will take the message from this and will say, well, OK, if the Geneva Convention doesn't apply, we've got quite a lot of people who that applies to as well.
I like doing this, and I've got an expert on. Peter Carball's joined me in the studio. Can I just say to both of you, Kieran has written this. If Russian mercenaries flew to Western Europe to kill British soldiers and they were captured, what would you have us do with them, Chris Parry?
Well, it's quite clear. We can't do anything other than imprison them or keep them impounded until the conflict is over. We don't have the death sentence in Western Europe. We don't have it in the United Kingdom. Sentence in Western Europe. We don't have it in the United Kingdom. So we'd have to basically impound them to the end of the conflict.
Peter, you know the dear viewers, listeners to this station, Chris will know this, have very strong opinions. Don't mercenaries know what they're letting them in for? Sorry, if they were stupid enough to go to war, it's not my problem, it's theirs.
They're not mercenaries.
I want to make this point. So
yeah, there are... under the Geneva Convention, prisoners of war are, as Chris correctly says, and there's a lot more than both of us, in terms of the combatant immunity. They are absolutely entitled to that. They shouldn't have been sentenced to death, and that shouldn't happen. So if the shoe were on the other foot, if those mercenaries were in Western Europe, for example, we would, as Chris correctly says, hold them until the end of the war. That is what has happened since the Geneva Convention. This is a massive headache for the Foreign Office. This is a massive headache for Boris Johnson. As Chris says, this is a negotiating tactic. There will be
Is it a massive headache, though?
Well, it is. These people are British nationals, and this
Can I throw something in the pot that'll probably make the two of you shake your head massively, right? I mean, look at this, right? I think Boris should now get the ambassador and all of his diplomats out of this country with immediate effect until these men are released and back in this country, and then you should start arresting nationals.
Well, that's a huge overreaction, and we need to be really... I mean, diplomatically, that's the point of diplomacy, is to keep these things as low-key as possible, as calm as possible, and to follow the conventions that have been there previously, because if you start expelling diplomats, if you start ratcheting things up... We saw this at the start...
Isn't the problem that actually we're all following the rules and the Russians aren't?
Well, that is part of it, but also you show your moral superiority as a nation by following the rules or by doing what should be done diplomatically, rather than having a knee-jerk overreaction, which brings you down to the level of those in Donetsk.
I completely agree, but of course you'd expect me to both of you to ask this question. Of course Russia escalates it. They've created this by sentencing these two. You both tell me that it's a negotiating tactic. What I'm trying to say is, in terms of, you said, a headache, is what if they do see this through? What does the United Kingdom do? That you'll need more than a knee-jerk reaction.
That's a question for Chris rather than me. I just wouldn't know the sort of...
I agree with you about the calmness of diplomacy. I absolutely, but
we're not going to go around executing Russians.
No,
we're not going to do that.
No.
There would be presumably severe diplomatic sanctions in terms of possibly at that stage expelling some diplomats, but not all of them. We can't go around arresting Russian nationals. That's an outrageous thing that the texter has suggested. So, I mean, I would probably ask Chris the same question and get the answer from him, the expert.
Chris, genuinely, let's paint that horrible scenario. They execute these two men. You said, well, we should then get rid of their diplomats. What do we say to the people who say thousands of people are dying in Ukraine because this man, I'm not allowed to call him a madman, has entered a sovereign nation? How long does the nice chat and diplomacy work if this man turns out to be what we all imagine and probably believe he is?
Well, I think in all these things you've got to look at what outcomes you want. A lot of people are saying, let's get rid of Putin. And I keep saying, well, you've got to look at the 350,000 other criminals who are behind him. There's a whole regime here that we have to deal with. And we need to adopt mafia rules here. I think those of us who've seen The Godfather and The Untouchables know exactly how you deal with people like this. But let me say, I think the first thing the government has to do is actually get the Russians to denounce this judgment. And if they fail to do so, they are complicit in this illegal act. And I think that's the line I would recommend we follow initially, while ratcheting up the pressure, both military and also in other ways, on these breakaway republics.
Do you think Putin, both of you, would be concerned about our reaction, or if it is just part of the game.
I don't think he cares. But Chris is absolutely right in terms of saying should at least be given the Kremlin should at least be given the chance to condemn this and say this is a breakaway republic. This is Donetsk. This is not us. We have not made this decision. We are not directing things, and this should not happen. I think the likelihood of that happening is very low, but they should at least be given the chance to do so, and that's what the UK government will probably be calling upon the Kremlin to do before anything else and anything substantive happens.
Interestingly, when we were talking about, you said this is bad news for the Foreign Office, it's a headache for Boris Johnson. I said something when I was handing over with Ian. We've been talking all week about Boris Johnson and the vote of confidence and how he survives and how he seems to have things that fall into his lap. Isn't this good for him, that the focus will be taken away from Partygate and his inabilities to tell the truth, allegedly, and actually now he can concentrate on being the statesman that apparently, in Ukraine, everybody thinks he's good at?
Well, it's interesting and politically...
Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's a perfectly valid point. I mean, the thing is that he doesn't... I mean, I'm sorry to talk about the potential execution of
of course.
Actually, it's not even an execution. Let's use our language correctly. It would be an assassination, because an execution is at the end of a proper judicial process. So let's just be careful with language here. Sorry about that. In terms of Boris Johnson, yes, he will look like a statesman. That in itself, let's just look at the brutal politics of that, doesn't really help him that much politically. It helps him in terms of he's focusing on something that isn't all the stuff that people are criticizing about. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jeremy. But in terms of, I mean, will it give him any boost? Will it help him in the by-elections necessarily? Probably not. But nonetheless, this is going to be, the big story over the next 24, 48 hours. You're totally right. You're totally right.
About. Yeah. And if I can just say to you, because Chris, loads of people are texting. Does Chris, like me, blame Liz Truss, encouraging people to go and fight, knowing that if they got caught, there was no chance of them being rescued? That's an interesting text, isn't it?
Well, I think if you looked on the left of the political spectrum right now and said, do you think people should have gone and fought for the Republican side in the Spanish Civil War, they'd all have said yes. They were trying to defend freedom against fascism. Well, these people have gone out to defend freedom against fascism. It's as simple as that. And if they are prepared to do that at their own risk, we should applaud that, to tell you the truth, because there's a lot of people that aren't putting themselves in harm's way. They're not mercenaries. They've signed up for the Ukrainian armed forces. They have legitimate rights, and it needs to go forward. But can I say, Jeremy, if it hadn't been for Boris Johnson and Ben Wallace and the current Chief of Defence Staff, we wouldn't be talking about this now, because I think if they hadn't stepped into the breach when Russia invaded, Ukraine would be on its knees by now. And I think that's what the Ukrainians recognise, to tell you the truth. Whatever you may think about Boris and all these things, he did a great thing in stepping into the breach right at the start, and people haven't really recognised that.
Listen, Chris, I get slagged off every single day. I think that that phrase, that great Tory phrase, the important things, I think he does it. Listen, we have to move on. I really appreciate your time. Chris, thank you very much indeed. Former NATO Commander Chris Parry and Peter Carball. Talk TV Drive. 4:20, a Thursday afternoon. You're listening to Talk TV Drive live from the Talk Radio studios, and that breaking news will keep you across it all afternoon. From Ukraine, a rebel court in the south has basically sentenced 2 British fighters fighting with the Ukrainian army, not mercenaries. 2 British fighters have been given the death penalty, and how this unfolds over the next few days and hours will be very interesting. You get all the information as it happens from Talk TV. Back at home, I mean, for goodness sake, I honestly, I want somebody to explain this to me. There is no other way than to describe what's happening with the whole cost of living thing, and certainly petrol, than to say the world's gone bonkers. It now costs, right, £100 to fill your car up, right? £100. Let's get factual about this. People won't be able to go to work. People won't be able to go out. Loads and loads of small businesses, taxi drivers, van drivers, haulage drivers are going to go out of business. What I still don't really understand, and I don't mean this to sound disrespectful to anybody, is quite why nothing can be done. And I know it's always the government. I get my old mate on now because he always makes sense. Howard Cox, founder of Fair Fuel, is on the show. Howard, good afternoon. Welcome to Talk TV Drive.
Hi, Jeremy.
This is getting barking mad, and genuinely, isn't it? Ridiculous and devastating for so many people.
I couldn't put it any stronger than that. It is crippling people, crippling small businesses. And I said to you before, and I've been working for about 18 hours a day since I last spoke to you on this, and I've spoken to a lot of MPs. And good news is that certain cabinet ministers have called me as well and saying they agree with what I'm proposing, which is basically we've got to cut fuel duty massively. I've just written a piece for The Sun, and to cut a long story short, I think things are moving in Parliament. We might have that pump watch body to try and control the profiteering as well. The point is across this is it is really hurting. It is hurting people badly. And I just get fed up. I watched Boris Johnson's talking about, I think it was to do about building homes in a conference this afternoon. I think a couple of people asked a question about what happened to the 5p cut in duty in the spring statement, which no one saw. And he adeptly avoided the answer. He said, we're looking at the pumps, we're watching the pumps. They don't get it, Jeremy, do they? They just do not understand that when you put £110 into your car when you were putting 60 quid in about a year ago, it is...
Howard, do me a favour. We were talking about this in the meeting, and I'll get slagged by people for what I'm about to say, but I mean it genuinely. In pure layman's terms, for me and anybody else who doesn't really understand, who goes to the petrol station and sees another 5p, another 10p, another 8p. I mean, today has been described by the RAC as a truly dark day for drivers, and the AA with them have said to the government, you need to do something. Why and how are prices escalating so rapidly on a daily basis? Who is to blame, and what the hell can we do for the consumer, for us who can't, people can't afford it? That's a fact.
Well, this is an entrenched problem. It's been like this for 20 to 30 years, where no one understands how pump prices are arrived at, Jeremy. And I've been asking this question for 13 years, and I still don't know the answer. And I have to say, and I've repeated this on your show before, do not blame the retailers, the forecourt owners. They are working on very slim margins, and they are working on tight contracts with further up the fuel supply chain who are supplying them. I actually believe the refineries are actually awash with cash. They're not passing... I'm not joking. That they're the ones being supplied from the supply of the Middle East or Russia with oil. And when it gets to the refinery, they're holding back. Honestly, I actually believe this, because there's only 7 refineries in this country now. There used to be a dozen or 15 or something like that. And these, further up that fuel supply chain, we need to have this Competition and Market Authority investigation. And the government must step in and ask a question. What have you done, for example, with that 5p cut in fuel duty? Where has it gone?
Yeah, and because they cut it and it went up the next day by about 8 pence anyway. Ridiculous.
Well, by definition, that means it went up 13p if you 8p55. But the government are being asked this one. They are getting the message big time, and I've got some great supporters in terms of people like Robert Halfon and Craig McKinley who are really working hard for drivers, and please support them in this. They're not all bad people, but the unconservative cabinet, and I mean the un-big C conservative government, are just not understanding this pain. And I'm ramming this home. I've had 36 interviews in the last 36 hours doing this. I think they're getting fed up with it, but I would have thought at least one minister might have watched it.
In terms of the realistic situation. You say the government has got to do more. They've got to deal with refineries that might well, as you said, be awash with cash. It's very easy, I think. I was on a forecourt this morning, and you want to, as you quite rightly said, you want to be angry with the forecourt owners and the attendants, but it's not their business at all. I've heard about Ukraine. I've heard about... what strikes me again about this government, and I absolutely will criticise Boris Johnson fully for this, and I've been a supporter of him and am still in certain ways. I don't understand the complete lack of foresight this government has shown, right? You've talked about this long before it was at the forefront of people's minds, and yet it's another example of another thing that has come to bite us on the backside and make people's lives, Howard, just dreadful. The amount of money that people are having to spend to use their car for what the most obvious things, take their kids to school, go to work even, as I said in the introduction, haulage businesses, all those sorts of things really are going to struggle. And unless something changes, what's going to happen to people?
Well, I have to say to you, one of the things I've always been anti is actually these actions like things like Extinction Rebellion or the Insulate, whatever they call themselves, gluing themselves to things. But I'm afraid people are getting to the stage where they will rebel. People are fed up. It's not just petrol and diesel, it's the whole cost of living, the energy crisis.
Listen to this, Howard. Jez, I used to visit my mum 4 or 5 times a week. She's in her 80s and recovering from a stroke. As of this week, this is the reality of what is going on. I can only afford 1 visit per week. This is not how I want her to see out what time she has left with me, Stephen in Belfast. There's the proof, but we shout at the rain. We shout at Boris Johnson. Briefly, haven't got all the time in the world. Tell me what you would do, what you want the government or whoever else to do starting today.
Well, the first thing they can do, and at a stroke of a pen, Rishi can just give us a 20p cut in fuel duty straight away. That would be wonderful, great news. Put in Pump Watch, the regulator, which I've got loads of support from MPs and including cabinet ministers, so we can find out where this profiteering is going on and we can understand the pricing process and have a Competitions and Market Authority inquiry too in terms of the full-blown process of actually that profiteering and make sure there's fair competition. And, of course, the big one for me is please sign up to fairfueluk.com.
You say it's annoying, you say it's frustrating. Do you think that people are... I mean, you've said the government are beginning to get it. Too little, too late?
I think it is too little too late, but we've got to take what we can grab hold of. I think there's going to be a bit of announcement in the next week or two about fuel duty. This can't go on like this at all, because I know pump prices will go up to £2.10p, £2.20. In Wigan, Richard Tice sent me a picture of one for £2.12p yesterday. And I'm working closely with him on that one. And I'm not making any political point here. I don't support the Reform Party or the Tories or Labour. I have to be apolitical in campaigning terms. But Richard is the only one actually saying let's cut duty by 20p. There are a lot of Tories saying it behind the back of Boris Johnson, but they need to stand out in front of him and say, look, grab him by the lapels and say, listen and act.
Now might be the right time. Howard Cox, founder of Fairfuel UK, thank you very much, Steve. Whatever you want to talk about, the change in situation in Ukraine, the situation with petrol, anything. This is your show, 0344 499 1000, Talk TV Drive.
I'm Tom Newton-Dunn, and this is Talk TV. The most memorable moment in my career, without sounding completely conceited, it has to be interviewing President Trump in the Oval Office in the White House. Particularly, the little red button he had on his desk. I had no idea what he did as the interview went on. I wondered more and more, was this going to launch a nuclear strike on North Korea or open up a shark pit that I'd then fall into? Turned out he pressed it right at the end of the interview, and in walked a butler with a tray carrying a Diet Coke. It was a Diet Coke button.
This is Talk TV News.
Good afternoon, I'm Zora Suleiman. 2 British men who were captured by Russian forces whilst fighting in Ukraine have been sentenced to the death penalty. Aidan Aslin and Sean Pinner were detained in April. They're accused of being mercenaries, but their families insist they were in Ukraine's military. The government say they're deeply concerned. The Prime Minister has insisted it's time to stop spending and start cutting taxes. Speaking in Blackpool this afternoon, Boris Johnson urged the public to pull together through the cost of living crisis. Well, it comes as the REC says it is a truly dark day for drivers, as the cost of filling an average-sized family car with petrol has exceeded £100 for the first time ever. Well, Boris Johnson also unveiled plans to help low-income families in England get onto the property ladder, but the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the plans don't go far enough.
I think the announcement today from the Prime Minister is the wrong approach. It is a reheated version of an idea that the government had back in 2015. They piloted it, it didn't work. And if ever you needed evidence that this divided government is completely out of ideas, it's this announcement today.
Some of the world's top golfers who are playing in the controversial Saudi-backed Live Series have been suspended from the rival PGA Tour. In a statement from Live Golf, they said the decision is vindictive and deepens the divide between the tour and its members. It's come under fire over links to the sovereign wealth fund of Saudi Arabia. And Prince Louis's adorable antics during the Platinum Jubilee has been blamed on sugar highs. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge's youngest son stole the hearts of the nation as he pulled naughty faces. Well, that's all for now. We'll have more in half an hour.
8 minutes to 5 o'clock. We're live across the UK. Talk TV Drive. We're keeping you up to date with all that news. Earlier, 2 British fighters captured in Ukraine have been issued with the death penalty. This is causing so much debate. How are the British government going to respond? Does it change the dynamic of what's going in Ukraine? What do you make of it? 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Oh, yeah, says Lisa in Northamptonshire. Let's get rid of Putin and end up with even more mess, because let's face it, Libya, Iraq, Yemen, Syria, they turned out well, didn't they? Not. The Western industrial war machine is disgusting, and so are our politicians who are ramping up the war, not trying to sort it out. Lisa, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but you know what really winds me up when I get told the Western industrial war machine? Why don't you what is Putin doing? That's a war machine against innocent people. I'm not saying that we don't want to sort it out, but really? Jezza, they choose to go to Ukraine. A part of fighting a battle of war is people die. Sorry, but this country should not be getting involved other than sending some food and first aid. That's it. Chris Parry, Boris used Ukraine to divert us from the issues he has here at home. NATO is supporting Ukraine and would have done so without Boris trying to take credit, because NATO wants to prolong the war and not seek peace, avoiding wars by seeking compromise. There's a lot of cynical people out there. Jez, yet again, the people on benefits get help to buy a house. What about us middle class that work damn hard and only just get by? I'm sick of it. It used to pay to work, but now it pays to not work. It's bloody disgusting, and never again will I vote Tory, says Phil Clark. That's reacting to that other news today about Boris trying to help people get onto the property ladder. Jams, they're my favourite people, just about managing right on the line. They're the ones that are suffering. Right, next guest, good friend of mine, responding to the news that research findings today published in New Attitudes to Hospital Waiting Times and Treatment in England. This report reveals a public willingness to travel further for faster access to NHS hospital treatment amid a lack of awareness of the legal rights to use a hospital and significant variation in waiting times across the country. So basically, you can go where you want. Aaron Ghosh, look in the park. Welcome to Talk TV Drive. How are you, son?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. A patient's right to choose under the NHS Constitution. What does that mean?
So the NHS was set up as a national health service, not a regional one, which meant you had the choice of all the hospitals throughout England, all 700 hospitals, including private providers that provide NHS treatment, where you can go and get your treatment done. And what's happening is we are seeing a huge amount, 6 million people on waiting lists, of which 2 million are waiting over 18 weeks. This is totally unacceptable. But we see a massive variation. So let's look at ophthalmology. You can be referred to one hospital and be seen within 2 weeks. Another one, it's over 2 years. Now, that's just not acceptable because of the area you live in. But what patients don't know, and this is what the whole point of this campaign is, you can actually access now that information. You can go onto a website, healthcompare.co.uk. It's completely independent, and you can see in your area, where is my closest waiting time? Where is my best rated hospital? What is the percentage of patients that are being cancelled off the waiting list? You can actually have that choice, and you can demand that choice to say, I want to be seen at this hospital because I can be seen far quicker than what I'm currently doing.
Right, without wanting to appear cynical, 2 things. The first thing is, everybody will jump up and down and say, in that area where they have a hospital that has short waiting lists, That's now going to be infiltrated by what I'm going to call NHS immigrants. You know what I'm trying to say? Migrants, whatever. So that area that was okay is going to be a problem. So that's going to cause localised anger. But I'm being genuine when I say this. If you look at the major news story, apart from what's going on in the Ukraine today about the cost of petrol, how the hell, Aaron, can anybody afford to drive anywhere when it's £100 to fill your car up? Genuine comment.
Sure, and listen, it's a really good point, because when we did the survey, we looked at people from low-income households, incomes that were earning between 10,000 and 30,000, and saying, would you be willing to travel? And actually, they would, because you have to think of the cost it costs you to stay off sick. It costs you time to go to your GP to get painkillers. It costs you taking time off work. It costs you not being able to look after loved ones. There is a far bigger cost to being left on a waiting list for 6 months, if not for years, which is what's happening now, than actually being going to get seen, get sorted. And we need to even out this health discrepancy. It shouldn't be right that you can travel less than 20 miles or 25 miles and be seen in half the time.
It's interesting as well as, you know, and I'll probably get slagged a little bit for this. I know that there's a lot of terrible things going on in the world. A lot of people will say, I don't want that hospital. I don't want to be referred to that hospital. They'll also complain if they have to travel far to another one where it's different or quicker service. So the consumer, in effect, the patients do have to make an effort themselves. This system, you think it's a fair system, a good system? You think it utilises the better areas? Would it not be better, unless I'm missing the point, to concentrate on providing better service in the areas that aren't providing better service?
I was listening to your show yesterday, and there was a lady and she was talking about how in the olden days you'd just turn up at these appointments and you'd wait there and you'd get seen. But what we've got is, unfortunately, a health service which in certain areas is at breaking point, but in other areas is doing outstandingly well.
Yeah.
And we can go back through to the politics about why certain areas were given more funding. University hospitals were given far more funding than small district general hospitals if you were living in rural areas. Why doctors were moving into areas where they wanted to live, and that meant, again, rural areas were seen to be left outnumbered and certainly understaffed. But actually what we have here is we have to make a change in the mountain of people that are waiting, literally the millions of people that are waiting. Yeah. And this isn't acceptable. And what we need to do is say, right, if we can't give people that information about where they would like to go, and if patients are willing, and this study is showing that patients now are willing to travel. And I certainly, Jeremy, if I had my mum waiting 6 months for a hip operation, and I could go 20 miles down the road and get it done in a month, I would drive her, and I would go to that. And I think a lot of us would do that.
Completely agree. I'll pick you up on yesterday, though. I know you're a private GP. We're good friends. It was Dr. Sonia Adisara. She was reacting to the news that the BMA was saying, you know, doctors shouldn't work more than 3 full days a week, and they're going to go on strike if they have to work weekends or evening appointments, which, against what you've just said, with a cost of living crisis, turns my viewers and listeners nuts, mate, because they can't get a goddamn appointment if they're not lucky enough to be able to afford to go private. I'd love your take on that briefly.
Listen, I absolutely agree with you for once, Jeremy. We're not going to fight here. I think I'm an old farty GP. I've been around for 20-odd years, and certainly when I used to do on-calls in hospital, we were doing week-long on-calls, and it is a vocation. You go when your patients don't need you to do anymore. That's one of the reasons why I did go private, was because I could give that level of care. Do not get me wrong, I totally understand they are inundated. I was looking at the local GP numbers in my area, and they've dropped by 25 this month. That's how many GPs are leaving. So there is less and less doctors available, which means the workload's getting higher on them.
But are they leaving because they can't do the job or because they make more money privately? And the argument, yes, and I haven't got long, is if they're being trained by the taxpayer, maybe they should be forced to stay. I don't know, mate, but I do know this. You know, for people to not be able to get an appointment. I think this motive today, this report today is great. It's basically saying to people, look, we accept the NHS is great in some areas and not so good in others, and maybe you're going to have to use this website and use a bit of your brain cells and get out there and do it and don't moan about it. I am all for that. I just think it's not, at the moment, it's not a great look, is it, the health service for people?
I think the thing is that patients have choice, and what the whole point of this is that you could go on to healthcompare.co.uk. You can have a look now like you would your car insurance, like you would your holidays, and rather just trust the travel agent that you used to go to for that holiday, or just the GP. you can make an informed decision about where you can get your healthcare done. And that is not only, as I said, NHS care, but there are private hospitals providing NHS treatments. Why aren't we utilising them? There are hospitals in this country. There are doctors in this country. We're not using them to the best of our ability.
Completely with you, mate. Always a pleasure. Really appreciate you being on. Dr. Aaron Ghosh responding to that report today, saying there is a website. We'll put the details on the screen. You can go to that website and you can say, I don't want to go to that local hospital where they're going to tell me to wait 2 months. I'm going to go down the road because I can get an appointment in 2 weeks. That apparently is our right, which is a good thing to hear, because guess who pays for the NHS? The taxpayer. Talk TV Drive. Quarter to 5, we're live across the UK. Talk TV here with that breaking news. You heard it 45 minutes ago. 2 British nationals, Aidan Aslin, 28 from Newark in Nottinghamshire, and Sean Pinner, 48 from Bedfordshire. They've been fighting in Ukraine, have been detained by Russian forces since April, held in the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic, a breakaway region in the east of Ukraine. They have today been sentenced to death in a country not recognised under international law, under a legal process not recognised under international law. And the world, I guess, will hold its breath and see what the response will be. Keep you up to date as ever on this show. We love your opinions. 0344 499 1000, text to 87222. Loads of you talking about the cost of petrol. It wasn't so long ago, says Andy. I remember it costing 50 quid to fill up, and that was a nightmare. Mark, talking about Russia, says, expel the diplomats, remove remove Russia from international organisations and crank up sanctions, use the UN to secure the release of the fighters. These people do not deserve diplomacy, Jez, or indeed negotiation. Genocide, rape and mass slaughter deserve nothing but international contempt. One of the other big news stories of the week has been that rail unions have been branded selfish by Number 10 over rail strikes which threaten, and I mean threaten, major disruption to passengers later in the month. The RMT union has said it will shut down the country's railway network on the 21st, the 23rd and the 25th of June. After talks over pay and redundancies fell through. Since then, 3 more train companies are set to go on strike later this month, worsening already what is looking like a pretty horrific summer. I've always said on this show it's important to get both sides of the coin. I'm delighted to be joined now by Senior Assistant General Secretary of the RMT and lead negotiator in the negotiations with the government, Eddie Dempsey. Welcome to Talk TV Drive.
Thanks for having us on, Jeremy.
I'm going to start differently, and I appreciate that you couldn't come on yesterday, and I appreciate you making the effort today. Thank you for that. Before we talk about my workers need this, my workers are not getting safety rules, they're not getting enough money, I just want to ask you something man to man. What do you think in the middle of a cost of living crisis, much as you're arguing for your workers, in terms of tone, what do you think that the majority of the British people think when they hear your boss, Mick Lynch, say, I'm looking forward to creating, all of this disruption, it's what's needed? Do you not think that immediately puts the RMT and most rail unions on the back foot?
Well, first of all, he didn't say that. And second of all, I think most people in this country know that wages have been falling for 30 years against the wealth created in this country. And at the same time, the people at the top are getting richer and richer and richer. And now we're in a cost of living crisis. And I think workers in this country, whether in the railway, whether in the NHS or elsewhere, need a pay rise. And if we're going to address the imbalance in this country, wages need to rise.
Let's take you up on that point. Absolutely, I agree. But according to the Department for Transport...
If you agree with that, you must agree with workers standing up and fighting for it.
According to the Department of Transport, the average rail worker's salary is £44,000. You wouldn't disagree with that, which is more...
I agree with that, yes.
What?
Our average salary of members in the RMT union is between £25,000 and £30,000. Our median salary is £31,000, exactly the same as the national average.
Well, the national average is £24,600.
Well, the national median is 31,000, and that's the same as in the RMT.
Nurses get 31,000, teachers 37, and care workers 17. The fact of the matter is, I'm not sitting here talking about that. I asked you specifically when it is made out as it has been made out. When we hear from the government, we try to look at both sides. I've always tried to look at both sides. The government said, you've walked away and announced this before we've even begun or even got through this process. There seemed to be... All right, let's hear it. But there seemed to be, my friend, a degree of glee when those announcements were made, as if this is us...
Glee? I don't know where you're getting this idea from.
So you feel sorry for the people that will miss out?
Let me tell you this. I think workers in this country ought to stand up on their own 2 feet and fight for better pay, because you don't get it by asking. And if you can't get it by asking, you need to organise and fight to get it. Now, if you're a nurse or a railway worker on 31, 32, 33,000, you can't afford to buy a house. You can't afford to live in this city in London where I am for certain. Now, wages have been falling for 30 years. Mm-hmm. We're subsidising wages with benefits. And at the same time, taxpayers' money is going straight into private profits. We cannot afford to be giving rail companies £500 million a year profits. At the same time, we're telling workers, you can't have a pay rise for 3 years and going forward. That is not on. And this union, I know it's difficult for people, the disruption we're going to face, but we do what it says on the tin. We stand up and fight for our members. And in this fight, we're standing up and fighting for working class people in this country.
How supported...
Others will follow.
How supported was, during the ballot, how supported was the strike call in terms of your members?
It was 9-1 in favour of strike action, Jeremy. It was extremely well supported. And look, we haven't gone straight into that. This is actually a challenge to us in the trade union from our own members. You've got to appreciate we've been talking for 2 years. We don't want to take people out in strike action. They lose money. We don't want to see the disruption in the country. We don't take glee in that.
So all right. So let's take that point. So this is good. This is why I wanted you on. You would say to people, this is a necessary action after 2 years of failed negotiations. Wages have dropped over the last 30 years, and our workers have got to a point where there is no other option. That's what you're saying to the British people, yes?
That's what I'm saying, yes. And you've got to appreciate, you've got Ian Bailey in the Bank of England saying we've got to have wage restraint in the country. Now, that's all right if you're Ian Bailey and you're on £500,000 a year. And that's all right if you're
It's all right for Mick Lynch, though. He's on 4 times the national average for a person working in your business. So why doesn't he give some of his money? But he's on 124,000 his package.
No,
we know that.
He's not, though, Jeremy. That's what the Daily Mail says, but that's not true.
How much is he on then?
He's on 85,000.
He's on 85,000. What about everything else he gets on top of that? Allowances that take his package. It's a £124,000 package, Eddie. You know that's a fact.
So
why doesn't he give £80,000 of his money to his trade union comrades?
Jeremy, in that money, they also include the national insurance contributions by the employer.
Okay.
That's not how you work out somebody's pay.
If he's
just to get a soundbite. He doesn't earn more than the Prime Minister. He's not on £126,000. He doesn't have a company car. He doesn't live in a mansion. He doesn't do any of those things. He's just a former railway worker like myself who's been elected by his peers to represent them because he's a good trade unionist. And we do what our members want us to do.
I know that you're going to talk over me the whole time. I'm going to give you someone else. Asked on the political thinking with Nick Robinson, the man that you think is not on £124,000, asked if he thought there would be many more disputes as inflation continues to cut real wages, and your boss said, I hope so. And you tell me I'm making up his rhetoric and he doesn't understand, and neither do you, why people are hacked off. Of course they're hacked off because they're done. I used a word glee and you wouldn't have it. I hope so, says Mick Lynch. Come on, he said it, man.
Jeremy,
what does that tell you?
I'll tell you, I hope so too. If you want people to have better wages, then you need to stand by your principles and support people who are prepared to fight for better wages.
What do you say to
the people? That's the logic of your argument. Either you want us to have better wages or you don't.
So you grind the country to a halt in return for better wages. What do you say to this text, Eddie? And I appreciate you being on. Whether this man likes it or not, he's just made driverless trains a lot closer. This can never happen again in this country where unions get control of us as a country. That's from a punter. What would you say?
I would say driverless trains are already here. Driverless technology is part of the future of the railway. Drivers are only a small portion of the workers on the railway network. We represent members across every portion of the railway industry. Now, as long as there's a railway, there's going to be railway workers.
Mick is one of your union.
Technology forever.
Mick is one of your union. He says, can you ask this gentleman who represents me what job he does and how much he gets paid?
So I'm the Assistant General Secretary of the Trade Union. I get paid £78,000 a year. And when I was a railway worker, I was a driver, and I was on £46,000 a year before I was elected into various jobs before I reached this one. That's my rate of pay.
I guess the problem is, and you would understand this, I don't want to argue, but I just want to say this to you. The problem is, whether or not, right, there is a desire amongst your members for more wages, and certainly, right, inflation going through the roof, food, the crisis that we hear, the length and breadth of this country. But I always feel like saying, and I'm not saying it makes it right or makes it wrong, it's not a moral thing, but in terms of tonally right now to the British public, you might, as you sit there, tell me that you've got no option. There will be zero sympathy about this because you're inconvenience everyday people who are struggling to get on with their lives. I understand you probably find yourself in a position where you don't feel that there's any other option. But it's just, do you understand where I'm coming from on that, Eddie? It's just
I do, Jeremy.
You want the public on your side, don't you?
Jeremy, I do. And we get a lot more public support than you'd imagine by looking at the media, OK? So a lot of public opinion is driven by what you read in the press and what the media says, right? But I know postal workers, I know NHS workers, I know workers in retail, in the shopping centres who are feeling the pinch, and they wish they had organisations to stand up and fight too. And some of them do, by the way. So I do hope more workers in more industries stand up and take this fight on, because I'm hoping that will be what is needed to make the government change course. Boris says the cost of living crisis is priority. Well, let's see something real about that. And you've got to appreciate what they want to do in the railway It's not just about pay, Jeremy. They want to slash thousands and thousands of jobs out of the industry.
Can I say something before I know that. Can I say something? There are 25%. Eddie, there are 25% less people taking trains since the pandemic, right? This taxpayer of us. 16 billion we've paid. 16 billion, that's 600 quid per household during the pandemic. I just think we're all getting to a point where we can't afford it. And I can't go on forever, but I have to say this to finish, right? You might well have grievances and you might well think you deserve money, but right now, the way that it's being done to us isn't a great look. That is all I am saying. And when you hear Mick Lynch going, I hope there's more industrial action, I'm telling you, the people that watch this, the people that listen to this, they have no sympathy and they won't back your cause. If you did it differently, they might. That's all I'm saying. 0344 409 1000. Talk TV is here. It's 87222 for your text. Start with the message with the word talk. We got the news headlines of 5. They're next, my friends.
On TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV. Talk TV News at 5.
Good afternoon, I'm Zora Suleiman. 2 British men who were captured by Russian forces while fighting in Ukraine have been sentenced to the death penalty. Aidan Aslin and Sean Pinner were detained in April. They're accused of being mercenaries, but their families insist they were in Ukraine's military. Well, the government say they're deeply concerned with the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss calling it a sham judgment with no legitimacy. The Prime Minister has insisted it's time to stop spending and start cutting taxes. Speaking in Blackpool this afternoon, Boris Johnson urged the public to pull together through the cost of living crisis.
But when a country faces an inflationary problem, you can't just pay more and spend more. You have to find ways of tackling the underlying causes of inflation. But if wages continually chase the increase in prices, then we risk a wage price spiral.
Well, it comes as the RAC says it is a truly dark day for drivers as the cost of filling an average family car with petrol has exceeded £100 for the first time ever. Well, Boris Johnson also unveiled plans to help low-income families in England get onto the property ladder. He's launched a review into better access to low-deposit mortgages. But the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says the plans don't go far enough.
I think the announcement today from the Prime Minister is the wrong approach. It is a reheated version of an idea that the government had back in 2015. They piloted it, it didn't work. And if ever you needed evidence that this divided government is completely out of ideas, it's this announcement today.
A government review suggests the age at which people can legally buy tobacco in England should rise every year. The plans would create a smoke-free generation with people under a certain age unable to buy cigarettes and other tobacco products in their lifetime. The smoke-free 2030 ambition aims for less than 5% of the population to be smokers. Some of the world's top golfers who are playing in the controversial Saudi-backed Live Series have been suspended from the rival PGA Tour. In a statement from Live Golf, they say the decision is vindictive and deepens the divide between the tour and its members. It comes under fire over links to the sovereign wealth fund of Saudi Arabia. And Prince Louis's adorable antics during the Platinum Jubilee has been blamed on sugar highs. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge's youngest son stole the hearts of the nation as he pulled naughty faces. Now time for today's weather.
Sunday Times Culture sponsors Talk TV Weather.
Hello, I'm Nazanin Gaffer. An east-west split with the weather today. Through the night, we've seen a band of rain move its way very slowly eastwards, and through this afternoon, it will be moving into western parts of the UK. So we've seen some rain already across parts of Ireland and Northern Ireland. That rain, the cloud as well, is also creeping into western parts of Scotland, parts of Wales, the West Midlands and the West Country towards the end of today. Ahead of that, there will be a little bit of cloud building up, as you can see, across some central areas, but generally around central and eastern parts of the UK today, I think it's looking mostly fine, bright, especially around eastern parts of England and eastern Scotland. And it's feeling warm in the sunshine too, particularly down towards parts of southeast. Temperature highs locally could be around 23 to 24 degrees Celsius. So as I said, an east-west divide for tonight, but overnight we'll continue to see that band of rain mostly becoming light and patchy, clearing away eastwards, but it probably lingers down towards parts of the southeast. Clear spells elsewhere. And then tomorrow we see a bit of a different flavour with the weather as it becomes windy, as we see the remnants of Tropical Storm Alex approaching the northwest of the UK. That's going to bring very windy conditions across parts of the northwest. Also some showers there. But for central, southern and eastern parts of the UK, it's looking mostly fine, dry, sunny and warm.
Times Sport sponsors Talk TV Weather.
The bosses at Talk TV have given me and Mike Graham our own show on Saturday nights. Why am I doing this on my own? It's because Mike Graham's late again. He's always late. I'm sick of this. I was promised Piers Morgan. Now I've got to work with Mike Graham. I've had it.
Friends, Talk TV Drive live from the Talk Radio studios. We'll keep you across all the news as it develops. That story from Ukraine breaking earlier. 2 British fighters who were captured in eastern Ukraine have been sentenced to death. Aidan Aslin, 28, from Newark in Nottinghamshire. Sean Pinner, 48, from Bedfordshire. They've been fighting. They've been detained since April. They're not mercenaries. They're soldiers. Their families say they've been held on the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic, a breakaway region. They have, in fact, been sentenced to death. That the outpouring from the government, from everybody, is just going to intensify. We'll keep you updated. Loads of you want to talk about that. Loads of you want to talk about the petrol situation. Loads of you want to talk about the situation with the railways. Loads of messages to read. Jez, your man's wrong. I'm a tanker driver. I deliver 38,000 litres at Grangemouth every day. And every day, those refineries are empty. I promise you. Jez says, Michael, I went to Huntingdon this morning. That was brave. Fuel 184 on the way and 188 on the way home. Great show. Loving it. Thank you very much indeed. Jez, firstly, what a pleasure to see you back on our screens. Obviously, somebody doesn't have a life. The government needs to put an immediate pause on the fuel duty. This money is within our control and can help today. It doesn't need to be permanent, just until the world stabilises. I think everybody thinks that's a good idea. Both BP and Shell posted record profits for the last quarter. Shareholders are happy, Jez, and the government lawyers aren't as clever as the private sector. Talk. What should we do, Jez? What we should do, Jez, is take all the tax off petrol and diesel, and then we can truly see which forecasts are going for profit, as surely it would all be the same price. Now we're getting there. What was it good? Talking to himself. Jez, oh, God. Right, he said, I'm so angry with that man from the RMT. Let's finish the whole goddamn lot of them and automate the whole train system, because actually they'd arrive on time. Jeremy, really, says Neil in Hornsey. What a ridiculous man Eddie is. My family reunion plan for that week is in tatters now thanks to these dinosaur unions. Do they think they are political parties or something with their rhetoric? These unions need to be smashed. Well said, the RMT. We support you fully. Crack in again. Don't mess with the RMT, says James in London, who doesn't have many friends. I'm joking. Rob, this union caller says they've been negotiating for 2 years. That's 2 years of lockdowns where people were losing jobs, businesses and homes. But this selfish man thinks they deserve a pay rise, whilst most people lost out with their jobs. And finally, RNT, you've achieved one thing. You've just won the Tories. Loads of votes. So many opinions. 0344 419 1000 for your calls. 8722. Start your message with the word talk. For your text messages, time for Thursday's political panel. Will they be as feisty as everybody else has been this week? Mike Indian, political consultant with the Connect Group, and Annabelle Denham, Director of Communications, not at IKEA, it's the IEA. I know I do it every time as a joke. Welcome, people.
Hi, Jeremy.
How are you, Annabelle?
Hey.
Where else can we start but with the news, the shocking news, actually, in the last 45 minutes, that two British nationals, Aidan Aslin, 28, Sean Pinner, 48, from Bedfordshire, fighting in Ukraine, detained by Russian forces in April, and were held by the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic, a breakaway region under Russian control. They've been sentenced to death. What's your response, Annabelle, straight away?
Well, it's absolutely shocking, though not altogether surprising. These are the sorts of lengths that we can expect Russia to go to in this war. I think it's very easy to forget here in Britain, where we are going to quite some lengths to support the Ukrainians with by supplying weapons, by imposing sanctions on Russia. But what we have not done is engage in all-out war, whereas that, in the mentality of Vladimir Putin, is exactly what is happening. He has launched a full-scale invasion of this country, and these sorts of actions are, unfortunately, the kind of thing that are going to go with it.
Mike, Peter Carber was saying to me earlier that now is the time for diplomatic calm, but he sees this, that these people will not be sentenced to death. This is a tool, a pawn, if you like. Think Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe, that sort of thing. What's your response to this news today?
Using people's lives as pawns in a war is always a despicable act, and I think it shows a great deal of bravery and commitment on behalf of these men to have been out there shoulder to shoulder with the Ukrainians. And although, as Annabelle says, the UK has done a lot, we have perhaps gone as far as we can do, and certainly conventional diplomatic routes are not going to be of any help when we're dealing with someone who plays the kinds of games that Vladimir Putin does do.
I completely agree. Two other massive news stories. I'm going to change this round. I'm going to do petrol stations and that after the break, because I just had that man from the RMT union on. Jez, I'm in the nuclear industry and I'm on 30 grand a year, and that muppet wants the pay rise. I can't have it. This is the news that the RMT, 3 days of strikes, 21, 23, 25 of June. Mick Lynch, who is on a package of 124 grand a year, whether Eddie Dempsey likes it or not, he is, was quoted on many occasions as saying, I'm looking forward to what the trouble that that we're causing, and I hope there's a lot more strikes. It is going to be a summer of discontent. Working from home is possibly back on the agenda because passengers won't be able to get in. What do you make of this whole situation, Mike? I simply said to Eddie Dempsey, I want everybody to get what they can. But in this current political climate, tonally, I think it looks dreadful to go on strike, and I think the British people will have zero sympathy.
We've got to acknowledge that our public transport system is, at the moment, still largely dependent on bailout funding from the government, whether it's rail, buses, the tube here in London. Strike action at this time in double-digit inflation is not helpful for the wider economy. We need to be able to get to the office. We need to be able to ensure that our urban centres particularly are thriving. People can get back to the high street, get back to the offices they need to be as well. The strikes appear to be politically deaf, and I suspect they won't help the union's case in the long run.
Would you agree with that, Annabelle?
Yeah, absolutely. They're not only politically deaf, but of course they're politically motivated. Look at the timing of these strikes. It's going to really upset Glastonbury festival goers, but perhaps more importantly, it could have some impact on the outcome of these crucial by-elections at the end of June in Wakefield and Tiverton and Honiton. One, the Tories fighting to keep a seat in the red wall, the other a seat in the blue wall, the traditional Tory heartlands. And I think that these strikes are really going to add to the sense of discontent and general malaise that people are feeling at the moment amid this cost of living crisis. And let's not forget the timing of those strikes. It's not just going to be 3 days. It's going to be a week. They're not going to resume normal service in between. And, you know, when it comes to what it is that the RMT is demanding, I'm afraid it's simply unrealistic to be expecting an 11% pay rise at a time when most people are receiving...
Just don't think it just doesn't sound good and look good, and the rhetoric isn't right. Petrol prices, gang, I mean, today, a dark day, the RAC and the AA agreeing, 100 quid to fill a normal-sized family car. People are waking up, Mike, every morning in this country now, wondering how else they're going to be bashed over the head. There doesn't seem an end to the misery, does there, pal?
Inflation is going to be a killer for most people this year, but especially those on low incomes and especially those who rely on motor transport, especially outside the capital, Jeremy. It shows that the Chancellor's targeted fuel duty cut wasn't passed on. And although the government's planning to name and shame petrol stations and companies that haven't done that and impose a windfall tax, people are still going to be feeling the squeeze at the pump. And ultimately what needs to be done here is the Prime Minister was sort of reiterating sort of Jim and Callaghan-esque rhetoric here, but there are still no real solutions forthcoming, and I doubt that there are fiscal or monetary policy makers who are really experienced enough or perhaps have enough knowledge or insight about tackling inflation to really give us the solutions we need. I think we're in for a very tough rest of the year, especially those of us on lower incomes.
I think that's right. Annabelle, you see the same? I mean, I agree with Mike completely. I don't see an end to it. I understand people are frustrated if they're not earning more, but also after a pandemic with hundreds, millions, well, loads of people lost their jobs. People's lives were completely finished. You know, they're not going to, with any sympathy, say to a train driver on 59 grand, you want an extra 11%, you're bloody lucky to have a job in the first place. That's what people are going to think, but that's a fact of life.
Yes, I mean, of course, one of the concerns that the RMT has centres around job security and the job cuts that may need to be made, particularly around ticket offices.
So if that's the case, why'd you go on strike and hack off your employers then? It doesn't make any sense at all, that, does it?
I completely agree. No, and the irony is, of course, is that an increasing number of people are going to work from home, and working from home will be increasingly normalised, and it's business and commuter travel that has made up the bulk of fares historically. Unfortunately for train drivers, those who work on the railways, we are adapting to a new post-pandemic normal in which some people are going to be permanently working from home. So no, this is absolutely not a solution. Of course, you know, for the people themselves who are going to be affected by this, you're not going to be able to move this summer. Petrol prices are so high, that's going to have a massive impact on our economy. People are simply not going to be leaving their houses and going out.
It's all miserable. It's all miserable at the moment. And then, right, you got 1 minute each on this. I'm not allowed to speak. Smoking age should rise, government report says. Mike?
It sounds like a sound policy. However, I think for those critics of the Prime Minister, they'll see this as further evidence that he's leaning towards what some people I suspect the IEA would say was big state and estatism. Personally, I welcome difficult reviews that look at things like raising the age of tobacco, but the Treasury will miss their tobacco revenue no matter how much they put the squeeze on smokers.
Annabelle, am I allowed to say, why can't people decide if they want to smoke?
Yes, exactly. It's prohibition by the back door. Why can't adults engage in a perfectly legal activity? And if you're raising the smoking age to 21, why not the voting age at all? Also, although I suspect the kind of people who are pushing for the smoking age to be raised are the same people who are suggesting that the voting age ought to be lowered, not raised. We should stop treating young adults like their children. This is a paternalistic measure that will drive more people to buy cigarettes on the black market. Let's not forget that 90% of the price of a packet of cigarettes is already levies as well. So, the government is doing all it can to pressure people into not smoking. If it really is prohibition, it's seeking, then it should be upfront and honest about that, and then we can have a debate about that. But no, can't support raising the smoking age.
Thank you very much indeed, my friends. Lovely as ever. Mike Indian, Annabelle Denham, Thursday's political panel. What do you think of everything we've talked about so far? The situation in Ukraine, those two servicemen sentenced to death. £2 a litre, 100 quid to fill your car, a normal family car. That's how much it costs now. It's that dire. So much to talk about. 0344 499 1000 Talk TV Drive. 5. We're just talking about this show, and Dave says, I've been polishing you turd, for months. 0344 499 1000. Oh, no. Excuse me. Text to 87222. It always happens when you think you're being funny. Thank you for all the texts, by the way. Loads and loads of them. I'm going to read as many as I can before we get to the calls. About that guy from the RMT, did he say people's salaries don't include national insurance contributions? Yes, they do. Someone on 30k doesn't get 30k. Tax and national insurance is taken off before they get their money paid in. When the communist unions, says Peter, I love this, when the communist unions, like NUT, held the British public to ransom, they will achieve the same as the NUM did in the 80s, obscurity. Let them strike. They have had their moment of fame. They will be dead ducks in the water in less than 5 years if they treat the British public in this way. David in Great Yarmouth, fuming at this railway guy. Drivers around earn around an average 60 grand a year. Could you explain to me how old you are, how old you, as a disabled person in my 50s, who was unable to work due to severe disabilities and doesn't have the earning power to level up, as this government tells us, how I'm supposed to improve things? So then I tune in and listen to that man moaning about, what's he on, 80 grand a year? Jez, I thought you were for the working man. Obviously not. Also, why are taxpayers subbing a private railway? And I guess you and your sidekicks don't have to worry about using NHS and travelling to do so, says Mark Howard. I am for the working man, and I'll tell you absolutely, I think everybody should be able to use the NHS. What I don't like is people who use the NHS who don't pay into it, and I simply say it's very easy for a union to say we need more money. Right now, there's a lot of people who can't even make ends meet, and maybe tonally, whether you have a good reason for asking or not, it doesn't look great. That's all I said, Mark. Nothing more, nothing less. Jezza, I'm a GMB member, and they are useless. Unions in the 80s, don't sweep your mess up, there's someone else's job. Unions in 2022, don't go to work. I say get the army in and let them drive the trains. That'll teach them, says Sergio, who is a part of one of those unions. Interesting. Boris, cancel HS2 and tell Carrie the Green levy on fuel is suspended. That'll cause a few woke heart attacks. Very interesting. Boris Johnson, if by giving workers a pay rise will affect the cost of living, like to see all MPs give back their £2.5 grand increase they received some time ago. I'd back that. Jez, regarding petrol and diesel costs, if we can put a cap on domestic energy costs, why can't the government put a cap on petrol and diesel prices? Martin in Cambridge. There is literally no goddamn good news in this country. You can't even get a flight out of this damn place. That's true. And finally, Jezza, the rail union are now imposing what amounts to yet another lockdown on the whole British population who rely on rail travel. Massively selfish, a massive own goal, and if Keir Interesting Starmer isn't careful, this will send him over the political Niagara Falls. 0344 499 1000 to the phone lines in Hereford. Chris, home of the SAS. How are you, pal?
How are you? Yes, not so bad. I've just been discussing about that silly idiot from the RMT.
Yes.
And he was going about the workers should stand up, the retail workers should stand up. But he wants to think about it, because if the retail workers, the food supermarkets went on strike, that bloke would have nothing to put on his plate. So I work in key workers, and I work damn hard, and I only work £9 an hour, and he's moaning that he's getting £76,000 a year. I wouldn't see that in my whole lifetime. You know, if they want just trying to get a grip, to be honest, I'm absolutely disgusted with it, Theo, to be honest. It makes my blood boil.
I completely agree with you about key workers, and I think the point to make is, I know Eddie Dempsey's a union man, you can hear that. You know, he blatantly said that his boss wasn't on one £24,000 package he is. The fact of the matter is, I repeat what I said before, Chris, I don't have any problem with anybody wanting to get a pay rise if they're doing a good job and everything's successful, and that's great. I just think when you've come out of a pandemic, when everybody's been furloughed, with hundreds of thousands of people have lost their jobs in this country, it's a bit like, what's that, Insulate Britain? You ain't going to get a positive response if you stick yourself to roads and stop people being able to get to hospitals or work. You ain't, RMT, going to get any sympathy from the British people, in my very humble and obviously useless opinion, if you say some of us are on 59 and that's not enough, because there's people on 8, 10 and 12 who can't eat. That's the reality. That's all I'm saying, you know?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Sorry, thanks a lot, mate. Appreciate your call. Let's go to Bishop Stortford. Want to get as many in as possible. Stuart, you're on Talk TV Drive. Good evening.
Good evening, Jeremy. Just about the two guys out in Ukraine, you know, the British guy. I've got a slightly, probably unpopular view, really. I think you've had a few texts about this anyway, but look, I mean, we didn't encourage, no one was encouraged to go out there and fight in a war, which we're basically fighting proxy war anyway, really. But they went out there on their own accord. Unfortunately, my view may not be very popular, but they're sort of like, you live by the sword, you die by the sword, and that's a horrible thing to say. I know it is. But, you know, they were prepared to kill people out there. And unfortunately, you know, this is the terrible thing about a war. You put yourself in a position like that, you have to agree to take the consequences. There are people out there that haven't put themselves in a position, that are just out there for, unfortunately, because that's where they live. You know, they've got no choice. These people had a choice.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one for me, and I'm glad we made the analogy between mercenary and soldier. These are professional soldiers who've joined the Ukrainian army. You're absolutely right. Several people have said on text and calls, you know, Liz Truss saying go out there and fight has caused this. These people had choice. Any war can end in a very bad way. I completely agree with you on that front. I wonder whether this is a seminal moment. I actually, to be honest, people are saying, I mean, Peter Carver was saying earlier, and Chris Parry, who used to be the NATO commander, he said this is just a tactic, like Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, like Terry Waite. They will use this, Russia and those forces, to try and leverage whatever they want from us, and it's all about diplomacy. I'm afraid I'm just one of those people that thinks that you don't sit down and have a diplomatic discussion with somebody who wreaks genocide on a sovereign nation, but I could be weird. Thank you so much, Stuart. Let's go to Durham. Sean, you're on Talk TV Drive. How are you, pal?
Jeremy, all right, son. Hi, Jeremy, you know, they were told, don't go by some people, and then Truss turned around and says, oh, well, you can go if you want to. Mm-hmm. Right? It's the Tories to blame for this. They've got us involved in a world war.
There's not a world war yet, though, is there? There's not a world war yet.
It's going to be, though.
What?
It's going to be, Jeremy. You can see it coming round the corner, man.
I mean, there is... Listen, I'm not sticking up for anybody, least of all Liz Truss, but there is always individual choice. Aidan Aslin, 28 from Newark in Nottinghamshire, Sean Pinner, 48 from Bedfordshire, made a decision to join the Ukrainian army. They were detained by Russian forces in April, held in the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic, and today, as we know, have been sentenced to death. Is that really the Foreign Secretary and the government's fault? They chose to do that. Do they deserve to die? Absolutely not. But unfortunately, they've gone to fight in an area which is not under international law, the Geneva Convention. I don't think this story is going to go away. I have to be really honest with you, Sean. And people, I think calm is needed, because it's easy, isn't it, to jump up and down and go, oh my God, it's going to end up in a war. I don't know what happens, but what I will say is this. This situation in Russia, in Ukraine, irrespective of today's news, is not going to go away. And I say it almost daily on this show, right? The worst thing in my mind is that we all get so used to what's happening and being reported on it that we don't deal with it. OK, one quick other caller, 1 minute only. Phil in Cardiff. Phil, you got 1 minute, you're on.
Yeah, hi, Jeremy. I was just speaking to your colleague there. I currently work on the railway, and quite frankly, I'm disgusted with the attitude of the union. I'm not a union member and won't be for attitudes like that. I think they're trying to hold people to ransom for absolutely no good reason.
Can I ask you a question? Because I was sort of born in the Thatcher era before that. If you didn't belong to a union before she destroyed the closed shop, quite rightly, you used to get, you know, you were called a scab and everything. Do you get pressure, Phil, now that you're not part of the union?
I certainly do get looks and some comments about it.
And does that bother you? Does that make you change tack, or do days like today make you realise that you got it right?
Yeah, the more they have the attitude they do, the more I wouldn't join a union. I agree with unions for giving you legal cover and legal representation should you need it. Other than that, I think they're a complete waste of space.
Will you go on strike as told, or will you break the strike line?
I won't strike. I'm not part of the railway that's been asked to strike, in all honesty, but I wouldn't strike anyway. Really good to have you on, Phil, in Cardiff, restoring our faith in the human race. Almost 5:30 news headlines with Zora Suleiman on the way. If you want to be part of this show, 0344 499 1000. Text, as ever, 87222. Start your message with the word talk. We've got so many to read out. We'll do more, I promise you, after the news headlines at 5:30, which is next.
I'm Ian Collins, and you're watching Talk TV, the home of straight talking. What makes me angry? People who own reptiles make me angry. Why would you own a snake when you live on the 14th floor of a flat in Maidstone? I mean, that's just ridiculous. On a more serious level, what makes me angry? The middle-class intelligentsia, the kind of Guardianista characters that purport to walk in the shoes of ordinary people that actually haven't got a clue what it's really like.
5:30 News Headlines, Zora Suleiman. Hello.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm all right in coral. Very nice colour today.
Thank you. Oh, you know your colours.
Oh, I know my colours. Sad. Well, I say sad. Sort of really disturbing news a couple of hours ago. The 2 British fighters captured in eastern Ukraine in the Donetsk area. There's so much to this story, isn't there? Because they've been sentenced to death, but actually that's not a country or a system that's recognised, right?
No, absolutely. And originally, Russia said they'd be given 20 years as a sentence. So that's now gone. It's off the table, apparently. And also, these 2 men, they didn't just go over there to fight. Mr. Aslan, he moved to Ukraine in 2018. He got engaged to a local woman over there, and then he joined the military. And Mr. Pinner, he was in the British Army, and he moved to Ukraine 4 years ago, so before he joined up. So they have been living there.
From a news point of view, this is a story that's not going to go away over the next few hours and days,
you know,
right?
especially now the political pressure is on the government to step in and do something, because...
Somebody said to me, oh, maybe, you know, Boris Johnson could just say to the Kremlin, you know, we need to warn you about this. My problem is you can't have an opinion. I'm not quite sure how you negotiate with somebody who wreaks genocide on a nation. I don't know how that happened. Strike action. I tried to maintain my coolness with Eddie Dempsey.
Well, it's potentially going to be chaotic for virtually all of us, isn't it? So if you're in your car, you're going to face petrol hikes, the cost of petrol. If you take the trains, you're going to face chaos on the trains at the end of the month. We've also got 50,000 from the RMT, staff members from the RMT union striking, and today it was the ASLEF union.
That's the drivers ASLEF.
It is, yeah. So that is Hull Trains, Greater Anglia and Croydon Tramlink. So they said it's a slightly different dispute. So they've got different concerns, but that will be around the same time. They haven't given us exact dates, but it's going to be at the end of June as well. Also, about an hour ago, we heard from the Mayor of London, and he's warning now that Transport for London will probably, so I guess it's going to be likely, will increase fares by 10% in January. We know it goes up by around 7%. But
the last person to leave the United Kingdom turn the bloody lights on. Oh, sorry, we can't afford to have the lights on.
But there is some sort of good news-ish, and this is for our friends in Scotland. So there's been strike action ongoing there with ScotRail and members of the ASLEF union. So, and this has been crippling services up there, but now they've had today breakthroughs in their talks, so hopefully, you know, something.
So we've talked about 2 British nationals being sentenced to death. We've talked about strike action, so you can't go anywhere, and then if you did want to go onto a train, which was cancelled, you get in your car, but you can't afford to put the... I mean, today, described by the RSC as the darkest day ever, 100 quid to fill a normal family car.
Now just over that, so it's now tipped over for the first time ever. Downing Street said it's hugely concerning, but what are they going to do? We're looking to see what else he is going to do. It's you know, the president of the AA, Edmund King, he said that Boris Johnson really must step in because the situation will get a lot worse if he doesn't.
I said something earlier. You're not allowed an opinion. I just want to see your face. I've described Boris Johnson as the luckiest politician in the history of the world. Right?
Yeah.
There are things now that he can do. There are things that he can do positively, right? Stand up to that union, drop taxes, deal with the Russians, and we can get away from all the stuff. It'll be very interesting to see. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much indeed. The amazing Zora Suleiman. Come on, Jezza. These guys have been in the Ukrainian Marines since 2018. Aidan has been a Ukrainian GF and was serving in their forces years before that idiot Putin started his atrocities at Neil in Cornwall. I'm sure I'm right that the bloke had lived in Ukraine for years. He didn't travel there to fight. Now he wants the UK government to get involved. That's interesting. The Chancellor, very interesting this as well, should get out into the countryside where people have to use their cars for essential services, some travelling larger distances for work. Farmers use diesel for their tractors and for transporting veg. He needs to wise up and help us out because we are struggling. The trade union drivers as left, they're not striking. There are a small number of drivers in the RMT. I am not on 59 grand. Facts, please. Now, you heard that news earlier. You heard the news earlier, according to Russian state media. 2 British fighters who have been in Ukraine for varying amounts of time, it seems, have been sentenced to death. They're called Aiden Aslin and Sean Pinner. They were captured in Mariupol in April during that intense fight for control of the port city before appearing in court in the Donetsk People's Republic. This is a separatist movement. This is sort of Russian rebels control this. It's said, and I don't know if this is factual, they have admitted training in order to carry out terrorist activities, but no doubt, without any shadow of a doubt, that will be under fierce pressure. Joining me now is former Army Officer Major General Chip Chapman. Chip, welcome to Talk TV Drive. How are you?
Yeah, good evening, Jeremy. I'm fine.
It's a strange time in this country, isn't it? Can we talk about these 2 men? Several texts, quite a lot of texts, quite a lot of messages, and let's just talk about it straight without getting wound up. A lot of people saying, why are you going to go and fight in a war when you know it's like this? And if you put yourself in that position, no, you don't deserve this, but why put yourself in that position in the first place? What would your response be to that, Chip?
Well, I think this is the most morally just war since the Second World War in terms of jus ad bellum, that is, that which causes or justifies war. The Russians invaded Ukraine. That's the bottom line on this. And if you think it is morally just to fight against autocracies, then you should go and do so if you are allowed to do so. Now, the British government could have taken legislation to designate Ukraine as a designated area, as they did in areas of Syria, for example, to stop people travelling there. They haven't, so they can go there and fight at the moment in a legal context. The next question that arises is it legally justified for them to be tried and sentenced to murder? Now, that, of course, is a more difficult question. All people desire order and security. The questions will be who provides security and order, whose laws and regulations apply, and who are the judges. And unfortunately, the judges here are the autocrats. And the get-out for the Russians is that they could say that this is the Donetsk People's Republic's laws, not the Russians' law. The Russians have said that they're independent or have recognised their independence. We haven't recognised, and neither has the international community. That then makes this a very grey area as to what's going on and whose laws apply and what punishment should fall from that.
It's interesting. If you sit here like I do, Chip, then you know some people will go off one end and say this changes the whole look of the war. There were never going to be boots on the ground, but actually at this point, if it carries on like this, you know, are we going to have to put troops in? The other side of the coin is the people who say no, this is a game. This is a tactical war game. This is taking prisoners like Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe. I said it earlier to give you, if you like, you know, an opportunity to put your side and maybe get out of a negotiation what you want because you've got leverage all of a sudden. How do you see it? You're an army man. Do you believe that these people, these 2 men, will be sentenced to death, or do you believe this is procrastination at its highest by these people via the Russians?
Well, the first thing you have to say is this is part of the information operation by the Russians. So, firstly, it applies to domestic Russian audience. Aren't we being good and we're cracking down and liberating people? The second audience is the one which it really applies to, which is you and me and the foreign audiences, because the Ukrainian Legion is something like 20,000 strong, and it may well deter people from going to fight if they think that they're going to be picked up and judicially executed, as I would see it. The third audience, of course, is the Ukrainians, and I think they misjudged the Ukrainians there, as they did at the start of the war, where they miscalculated with, you know, you are not Ukrainian, you are Russian, and didn't see the Ukrainians as a nation. If you're going to do this with the 2 British people, there is a possibility that they would do it with the Azov battalion who defended Mariupol. And I see it in that context. So what they will see is what is the reaction over the next month when the so-called appeals process will go on before they would be shot, as we think they will be at the moment. So is the reaction of the international community going to be of such an order that it would stop them doing stuff to the Azov battalion and the defenders of Mariupol, because that would be against all the laws of war as we would see it. But again, this is not a war from the Russian perspective. This is a special military operation. And so again, you get into a grey area of what is a war and what rules apply.
You know, I find it... I'll be slagged by several people, no doubt, for this, and I don't mean that badly, but, you know, when I hear you say, like, the rules of war and what's allowed and what's not allowed, war is disgusting and wrong and dreadful, right? This man, however it gets dressed up by whoever, entered a sovereign nation and has been wreaking havoc because in his mind, since the breakup of the USSR, these people should be in his country. And you're quite right. Within 3 to 5 days, I guess he assumed all would be fine. And he's had, you know, a realisation that that isn't the truth. I see this today as incredibly unfortunate. But, yeah, another tactic, as you said, to push and push and push and push and to see what's the response. You can't blame a lot of people, Chip, in this country for saying something needs to be done about this man. Otherwise, this is just going to go on forever. And he's going to be taking advantage, laughing at the rest of the world almost. Do you know what I'm saying?
Of course I do. I mean, the worst combination you can have here is unchecked power and compromised morality. And here we've got unchecked power and compromised morality at a state or national level. And those two are a lethal combination. And that is why Ukrainians will defend, because you could have multiple Bukas, you could have multiple Mariupols, you'll have moral injury at a nation level. And one of the concerns of the Ukrainians very early on was that all the actions of the Russians, which I think there is some validity in this, met the definition of genocide, which is an intent to destroy in whole or part a religious, racial, national or ethnic group. And the Russians, and Putin in particular, do not see the Ukrainians as a national group.
Still genocide, though. Major General Chip Chapman, thank you very much indeed. I really appreciate you being on the show tonight. Fantastic. Former Army officer. Great to get his perspective reacting to that news. 2 British soldiers, they are soldiers, fighters, captured in Ukraine in April, have been sentenced to death today. That just wraps up the whole story, and just so many people are getting involved. If you have an opinion on that, on petrol, 100 quid to fill your car, could be £2 a litre. Get it? I mean, the whole thing's... If you tune into this radio, this TV station right now, you're just like, what's the point? It's not great, is it? Something to smile about. Save it was Verity's, but I want to tell you a very funny story about Verity next on this show. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk TV Drive. Friends, busy show today, 5:45, live across the UK. Talk TV Drive until 7. Jez, I now have to pay over £1,000 a month to send my son to nursery, and it's now costing me over 350 quid just to drive him there. If it carries on like this, I'd either have to stop him going, or stop working, or stop shopping. It's not easy. It's difficult, says Rob. I completely understand. That's what I'm saying. So I was trying to say to the RMT union. Regarding petrol prices, Jez, why can't the bloody government impose a maximum charge? This would remain for a certain length of time. True. Jez, that's me. Train drivers think it's tough going, living on a basic salary of 54 grand a year. The toughest driving job is being a lorry driver with so many restrictions. Lorry drivers work an average of 60 hours per week and only get an average of 35 grand. So, Anthony says, concentrate on what's right, you lot. Absolutely. Max says, Stuart's wrong. These guys went over to fight a just cause. They should be treated as prisoners of war. These are the 2 British soldiers who have been sentenced to death today in Ukraine. These people who moan are the same people who would never cower behind their mother's skirts if the same situation happened there. Jez, RMT are simply speeding up the focus on the technology needed for automation of our rail system. They are doing now for rail workers what the NUT did for miners in the 80s, ensuring their own demise. Excuse me, this happens every day now. Just on the telly. Yeah, love you, bye. That's my son. Talk TV, yes, Jez, regards the 2 soldiers. Time has come for the rest of the world to stand up to Russia. Where's the peacekeepers UN? Where's NATO? Time to send in the troops and proper military hardware. Unless the world stands up now, China will become stronger still. Jez, will that non-union member take any increases in pay that the union obtains? I don't think he will. I have no idea. He might do. If the RMT cancel the strike, nothing will change. The strike must happen for things to move. And finally, Mick, Putin could do what he wants with prisoners of war, whilst Germany and France cower behind their bunkers. That's absolutely true. Let's just bring it down. I mean, up. Let's do whatever. Stevie Denya's in the house.
Hello, Jezza. How are you?
Can I just say hello to Ray and Yvonne Denya? Is that name?
It is, yeah.
Denya's not a stage name.
No. This is a real deal.
Raymondo Denya.
Yeah.
Raymondo.
Yvonne.
And Ivoni Denya. They're very sweet. They watch their son on this show, and she sends a little text message saying, you did all right.
Yeah.
Listen, Mrs. D, I think he's the bomb. I think he does brilliantly every night. That's what you told me to say.
Yeah, exactly. You read it, yeah. Okay.
And he loves you both and hopes that you have a lovely holiday this year. Right.
I'm in the good books.
Did you get Verity a birthday present? Because I'm going to tell you a true story very quickly about Verity.
Go on.
I decided because she's worked so hard for 9 months.
She's a trooper, isn't she?
And you know, I found her and all of that. Anyway, so I'm not going into how much, but I gave her some money because she'd had her hair done and it was very expensive. So Victoria and I thought we'd give her some money. So
how much did you give her?
I'm not going to say, but 200 quid. And I put it in a card, right? And she was like blown away and said, "Oh, that's so kind." Anyway, this is what happened. This is why I think I'm getting the onset of early old age. I woke up this morning and I looked in my wallet, and 3/4 of the money was in there. So my wife's saying to me, "You've been larging it all yesterday afternoon about how much you gave her. And in fact, you're that old, you stupid git. You only put 1/4 of it in." So I'm really stressed, 7 o'clock this morning. Then I think the bank's giving me more. I'm going to go back to the bank. Then I ring Dave and he goes, "Oh no, she felt really bad yesterday. She put 3/4 of it back into your wallet whilst you were on air."
Oh, that's Verity through and through.
It is, but it's also stupid, isn't it?
Person.
She kept some of it though.
I would have kept it.
But also, can I just point out, Mrs. Carl, because I know she's listening, right? I would have taken that money back to the bank and said, "I think you've given me too much." And she said, "I don't think you should have done that." I think you have to be honest.
Yeah, I think you do. I
said to her, the lesson of this is, you should set your bar higher. You only think you're worth that, you're worth all of it.
Yeah, it doesn't send out a
so
great
the cheeky
message
cow's taking it back out.
She got it all.
Yeah, she's got it now. She's happy.
I love it.
That was her birthday.
How very kind. I just wrote a little note in her card. But anyway, I mean, the thought was there.
Didn't give her anything?
No.
Nice. You see, Yvonne, see what sort of son you've created? Selfish kid. Critics have hailed the release of Ms. Marvel, Disney's first on-screen Muslim superhero story, as a joyful slice of pop culture history.
Yeah, I don't know too much about Marvel, but I've seen this and it's beautifully done. This is the character's Kamala Khan, who's played by a newcomer called Iman. And basically the whole thing is she's a practicing Muslim from Pakistani origin. And lots of people have been saying, well, we're finally being represented. They've very much done it as a kind of tongue-in-cheek, a bit like a kind of bend it like Beckham. So you look at the trials and tribulations of family life, but it's lovely, it's real. I was saying to you a couple of days ago how good Disney Plus is. this is on that, because you've got all kinds of really great entertainment, some edgy. It's a real kind of like at the leading edge of new ideas and entertainment at the moment. Certainly taking kind of the Netflix app on a run for its money. So do check it out. I really enjoyed it, and I'm not big on these Marvel things, but
okay.
Enjoyed
Samantha is coming back to Sex and the City, not Kim Cattrall.
Well, so this got me
because they fell out.
I am
massively.
a huge fan of Sex and the City, so I was
amazing.
straight onto this because obviously it has come back, but without Samantha, it's just quite mediocre, isn't it? So
she was it.
Well, she was it. She
Yes,
had the killer lines, and I can't repeat any of them because it's 10 to 6, and I'd get sacked. So I'd never be invited
you can't
back.
be sacked.
No, why not?
Who are you going to be sacked by?
Well, you may say never come back again.
No, I'd never say that. I might get sacked,
okay.
but
Well,
then you can just go, no, fine, come
So the deal is Samantha's still in it.
Right.
But Kim Cattrall is not.
Oh, we're going to do what they did in EastEnders with Daniela Westbrook. She's going to become somebody else.
I think it's text messages. I think Carrie's going to get a text from Samantha because in the series, Samantha's supposed to be living here in London, taking a break.
That was one big fallout, by the way. A massive, massive fallout.
Over many, many years, wasn't it? So they really fell out, but it's not the same without them. And I've tried to make believe that it's good to see it back and the new ideas and the kind of woke agenda, but you need Samantha to disrupt the peace.
How can you do Sex in the City woke way? So Mick Jagger, how old is he now? About 89, isn't he?
Gosh, yeah.
Has been out enjoying Liverpool's tourist hotspots ahead of the Stones' first concert in the city for 15 years.
50 years.
What hotspots in the city?
So he's been hugging Cilla Black, the statue.
The statue. It's
been a long day.
The statue.
He's also been to the Cavern, where of course the Beatles play.
Great city.
As well.
Have you been to Liverpool?
I have only once, because I used to live in Manchester. And for goodness sake, I should have gone over to Liverpool.
If you do ever go to Manchester, the first thing you should buy if you go to Manchester is what? An umbrella.
It doesn't rain.
I went to Manchester, and for the first 63 days, I promise you, of working there, it rained every day. I remember thinking, because it's in a bad, but I have to say about Liverpool, brilliant, brilliant city. Go and enjoy it.
Yes.
Gigs this weekend. Let me know. Download Festival.
Download Festival. This is like the proper kind of metalheads festival. So we've got Iron Maiden there. Lots of different surprises over the years. Metallica got back together at that festival. Guess this is the most random person who's ever performed at this festival. Jada Pinkett Smith was on stage with her rock band back in the day, a few years back. Will Smith also came on stage during that gig.
Who did he hit?
Well, exactly.
Just went out and hit somebody with a guitar. You looked at my missus, bang.
I'd be very much up for seeing Biffy Clyro there. Biffy boys are fantastic. Are you au fait?
No, but can I just completely off the cuff?
Go on.
You know Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock. Chris Rock, he got attacked, and then Dave Chappelle. They're doing a joint gig later this year at the O2. It should be amazing.
Oh, can you imagine that?
Details to come out. Now, Diana Ross.
Yes.
Cardiff tomorrow night. That'll be fun. I wasn't blown away at the Jubilee.
Cardiff Castle's a beautiful backdrop. I've been on stage there, and you've got Butte Park. It's really quite magical, so I think that's going to be a really nice setting. She looks younger now than when Chain Reaction came out. I have no idea how, in 1986.
I can't. I wasn't that impressed the other night. Sorry, maybe I'm
What
wrong.
did you think of her performance?
It was all right. Wasn't. I will maintain what I said, and I got quite a few people agreeing with me.
Yeah.
The Jubilee, for me... Who's the most successful female singer-songwriter in the world? Adele. I'd have got Adele leading that in London Town, Coming Home, with Ed Sheeran. You know, classic Elton John. Absolutely Adele should have done that. One to watch now, Stranger Things. This isn't the lawyer thing, is it? Because now,
No, this is the...
well, I've got to tell you, so we watched the Lincoln Law, and then I got home last night, and Mrs Kay had started watching a series about a prosecution lawyer prosecuting a Tory MP who was in cahoots with the Prime Minister, is accused of rape. And it's over 8... Anyway, it was fantastic.
What's it called? Do you know?
I can't remember. We watched all 8 of them.
I think I've seen the trailer for this.
Really, really good, by the way. Really
Let me know.
Turns out that the prosecution lawyer was raped by him at Oxford.
Well, you've just given away this...
No, I haven't.
Oh, OK.
And then he gets sacked. But that's the end of the story. It's not worth... No, but it is fantastic. Tell me about Stranger Things.
What I love about this is it's got a great storyline, but it also brings back songs that we've forgotten about. So this series alone is responsible for getting Kate Bush back into the top 40. She's at number 8 this week.
Honey, what the hell?
I think it's the most successful debut weekend Netflix have ever seen.
Really?
With this season 4.
Amazing.
I think something like, here we go, 260 170 million streams so far. So get into it. It's got a really great soundtrack. It's brought back like the Clash in the first season. So it starts off in 1983, second season 84, 85. This is 86. It's very clever. And it's funny, and it's a bit of a retro fest. There's some great music in it.
You're so enthusiastic, I love it. What was I going to say to you? Ray and Yvonne, Denier, if you're watching, I think I'd give him 10 out of 10. Do you know what I've decided I'm going to try and do?
Go on.
Not that I've got much sway, but I think I might be able to put it. I think you should go and I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here.
Me?
I think you'd be amazing.
Do you know, Kate Lawler once said to me, I said to her, how would I do in Big Brother? She said, you'd either be voted out first week or you win.
I'm never, ever doing I'm a Celebrity. They look at them through there. They are desperate for me to do I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, right? One big problem, ITV. But you would be great.
Do you think so?
Do you not think you'd be great?
Well, I don't know.
I just think you'd be amazing in it. I think you'd be rushing around just giving facts out and being happy and...
Jazz hands.
Just the whole thing would be amazing. Steve, Denier, listen. Yeah, you don't care about me. I get that. You're all looking at Denier. We must get Anton Deck. We must try and sort it out. Would you like to do that?
Yeah. No bugs.
You could take your mum to the hotel. What do you mean, no bugs? You got to eat bugs. Have them in your pants.
Bit sensitive.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Your mum will have to fly out to the hotel with you.
Be great, wouldn't it?
She'd love that. Steve Denier, I'm a Celebrity. Get me out of here. Coming soon. That's not a promise, but it's something we'll try and do. Thank you, Stevie D. Always fantastic. We love you. We're heading towards the news at 6, my friends. Is it just me, or does Jeremy Kyle have a massive crush on Verity? Tell him to wipe his bottom lip. Whoever sent that is deranged. No, I don't. I love my wife. But Dave Levine, on the other hand, he is salivating like, I don't know what. News next.
on TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV. Talk TV News at 6.
Good evening, I'm Zora Suleiman. 2 British men who were captured by Russian forces while fighting in Ukraine have been sentenced to the death penalty. Aidan Aslin and Sean Pinner were detained in April. They're accused of being mercenaries, but their families insist they were in Ukraine's military. Well, the government say they're deeply concerned. The Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, has called it a sham judgment with no legitimacy. The Prime Minister has insisted that it's time to stop spending and start cutting taxes. Speaking in Blackpool this afternoon, Boris Johnson urged the public to pull together through the cost of living crisis.
But when a country faces an inflationary problem, you can't just pay more and spend more. You have to find ways of tackling the underlying causes of inflation. But if wages continually chase the increase in prices, then we risk a wage price spiral.
Well, it comes as the RAC says it is a truly dark day for drivers as the cost of filling an average-sized family car with petrol has exceeded £100 for the first time ever. Well, Boris Johnson also unveiled plans to help low-income families in England get onto the property ladder. He's launched a review into better access to low-deposit mortgages. But the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says the plans don't go far enough.
I think the announcement today from the Prime Minister is the wrong approach. It is a reheated version of an idea that the government had back in 2015. They piloted it, it didn't work. And if ever you needed evidence that this divided government is completely out of ideas, it's this announcement today.
Fears of widespread travel chaos across the UK has now intensified after 3 more rail companies announced plans to strike later this month. Train drivers from Hull Trains, Greater Anglia and Croydon Tramlink will walk out in separate disputes over pay. It's as up to 50,000 RMT union members will stage the biggest British rail strike since 1989 at the end of June. And Prince Louis's adorable antics during the Platinum Jubilee has been blamed on sugar highs. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge's youngest son stole the hearts of the nation as he pulled naughty faces. Well, those are the latest news headlines. Still to come, your TalkSport update, but first, your weather.
Times Business sponsors Talk TV weather.
Hello, I'm Nazaleen Gaffer. We had an east-west divide with the weather today. Western areas cloudy with patchy rain. Eastern parts mostly dry, bright and warm, especially in the southeast. Over the next few days, though, we're going to see more of a north-south divide as we see the remnants of Tropical Storm Alex heading towards northern parts of the UK. That's going to bring very strong winds across these areas and also blustery showers, whereas further south won't be as windy. It will be mostly fine and dry. Back to this evening then, and we see that patchy light rain and drizzle continue to move its way further eastwards into tonight. It may linger across parts of the southeast by the early hours of the morning. Otherwise, it will be mostly dry with some clear spells. But at the same time, the remnants of that tropical storm Alex head towards the northwest of the UK. So tomorrow, it will be a windy day across parts of the northwest. Blustery showers likely there. Further south and east for central, southern and eastern parts of England in particular, it will be mainly dry and bright, breezy, but still fine and warm. And similar conditions are expected on Saturday. Then Sunday, we see that low clear away eastwards and it looks fine. And finally, a herd of deer struggled to cross raging floodwaters in Vestavia Hills, Alabama yesterday amid flash flood warnings issued by the National Weather Service. Video captures a group of deer trying to manoeuvre across the flooded area before they are swept away by the water.
Sunday Times Culture sponsors Talk TV weather.
Hello again. Live Golf has accused the PGA Tour of being vindictive. It's after it suspended those who are taking part in the breakaway competition with immediate effect. They have said it will deepen the divide between the tour and its members. Phil Mickelson and Lee Westwood are among those to have signed up for the first Live tournament in St Albans, which got underway earlier today. The Chief of Police in Paris has apologised to Liverpool and Real Madrid fans for the arrangements at the Champions League final that were obviously a failure. Australia. Didier Lallement is profoundly sorry that honest people were tear-gassed, but insisted it was either that or charged the crowd to move it back. Well, the Liverpool City mayor, who was mugged ahead of kick-off, described the scenes as completely chaotic on social media. And the Premier League clubs have agreed to keep the £30 price cap on away tickets until 2025. That's the latest. We'll be back with more in half an hour.
The bosses at Talk TV have given me and Mike Graham our own show on Saturday nights. Why am I doing this on my own? It's because Mike Graham's late again. He's always late. I'm sick of this. I was promised Piers Morgan. Now I've got to work with Mike Graham. I've had it.
Friends, Talk TV Drive live from the Talk Radio studios, 6:05, JK till 7. I had a really strange thing happen to me during that break. So you'll remember my son tried to FaceTime me and I cut him off as I was talking to Steve Denyer. And then we finished that and went to the loo and came back and all I could hear was this, Dad, Dad, Dad. I hadn't cut him off, and the poor bugger had been watching for the last 15 minutes. There we go, 0344 499 1000, text to 87222. Jez, regarding the RMT union strike, I'm a bus driver working 48 hours a week and £24,500 a year. Trust me, says Kieran Ingham. Ingram, I hope. They have absolutely nothing to worry or moan about. Putin will say there is no war with Ukraine, so the two captured Brits can't be classed as prisoners of war. As far as I'm concerned, if you go into another country and use military force, it is war. Fred Appleby in Bridlington. Fred, thank you for your message. Jez, it's called Anatomy of Scandal, and I was only on series episode 4, so you've ruined that. Now I'm going to watch the Lincoln Lawyer. You probably ruined that as well. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. It's very worth watching. There's lots of twists and turns, but yeah, I gave it away. Right, 6 minutes past 6. Time to turn our attention stateside. The US House of Representatives has voted through a series of measures regulating the sale of guns, but Republican opposition in the Senate means the bill has little chance of entering law. The new measures would bar sales, this is interesting, of semi-automatic weapons to people under 21 and ban large-capacity magazines. They voted through the House of Representatives, but the Republicans, Cruz, his mob, apparently weren't. Now, hours before the vote, survivors of the Uvalde school shooting gave emotional testimony to lawmakers, which reduced some to tears. The primary school shooting, of course, in Texas, claimed the lives of 21 people, including 19 young children. This debate about guns, weapons, will roll on and on. Delighted to go stateside and speak to the man who knows absolutely everything about everything. Michael Graham, welcome to Talk TV Drive.
So you were in the bathroom and your son was tuned in to your phone?
No, I've left the phone in the studio. I've gone down the corridor.
Loo is a bathroom, right?
Listen, I've left the phone in here and I came back in the studio.
I was okay. That's much better.
And I go, Dad.
That would have been really tragic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now,
what is that noise? Yeah.
Before we talk serious things, I have tried to construct a career for you. And the other day on breakfast, this is what I was told. I'm not getting up to speak to him at that time. He can do one. Where's the commitment, Graham? What's going on, man?
I'm sorry. Look, I'm an American. We're lazy. We're laid back. I gotta have my cuppa before I can do anything.
Your cuppa.
I've been practicing. I try to talk like all you English Brit people types.
Yeah, all you English Brit people. Mike, really interesting. So the US House of Representatives have voted through a series of measures regulating the sale of guns. Republican opposition in the Senate means the bill will not see the light of day. It was about regulating, interestingly, after that terrible situation in Texas, the sale of semi-automatic weapons to people under 21. Greater checks, banning larger capacity magazines. To the outside world, that would make perfect sense. But the reality of the American gun lobby and everything that we talked about before means this is not going to happen. Disappointing, frustrating, normal in America? What's the response?
Well, in current politics, it's normal. And I understand that to people not from America, trying to understand the gun culture here is impossible to understand. And you can argue that it's a terrible culture and that we shouldn't have it, but it's been part of the American DNA for 200 plus years. The one thing I would say though is when you say gun lobby, that's a misnomer. The National Rifle Association is basically bankrupt at the moment. They've had huge legal fights. The internal stuff. It's a long, terrifying. The bottom line is nobody cares. The gun lobby is in fact that about a third to 40% of households in America own a gun. And there are millions and millions of voters that if the NRA were teleported off the planet tomorrow, they would still go out. This is an issue they care about. It's like saying that there's an abortion lobby. No, there are people who really believe that the right for a woman to have an abortion is just important. It's a motivator. In fact, the two single issues that have the most voters who just vote that way, not because of lobbying, Planned Parenthood spends money or anything, are abortion and gun rights. And both of those issues suffer from a lack of trust.
Yeah.
When you say to people, we need reasonable, most people in Europe can't believe that in America it's legal to get an abortion until like the week before birth. It is. It's astonishing. And so why is that? How can it be so extreme? Because the people who support the right are afraid the people who oppose it want to end all abortions. They think this is just step one. The same with gun rights. The people who say, you're like, why won't you accept raising the age to 21? That's pretty modest. Why not say the largest clip you can have is 30 rounds? Why is it? Because the people who oppose it say, no. It's not that. It's the thing you do 5 moves from now in this game. There is no trust because the fact is the pro-lifers would ban all abortions and the anti-gun people would confiscate all guns. What I
would ask you about the gun situation, and let's be perfectly honest, I think Sharon Osbourne said to me the other night there are 300 million Americans and 400 million guns. They're never going to get rid of them. What I don't understand is if we don't start going down the Second Amendment route and we talk about the fact that somewhere deep in the psyche of the American people is a belief that they should be able to defend themselves, although I repeat what I said last week, to me there's a difference between defending yourself and sending an 18-year-old with 2 semi-automatic rifles to buy that, and that's just different. That's crazy stuff. I don't understand why these parties don't meet in the middle. I don't think the NRA would be destroyed. I don't think the argument would be lost if somebody didn't instigate better background checks. Why, I was speaking to a guy the other day, you weren't with us, and he's Scottish and he has a gun, but in Britain he has to train every time and he has to pass a test every year. Why would not those people in power? That doesn't take away the choice of having a weapon. It's regulating what can something that could kill people. And to me, if it was regulated, that would perhaps knock out some of the horrors that we see. Do you not agree with that?
Well, I mean, if you're asking me if I agree with it, I'm telling you where the people who are, the voters that these Republican senators are afraid of, because they know the voters will vote them out. Yeah. And those voters say none of the proposals that are being put forward in most of the cases would have any impact on the mass shootings we're talking about. That's what makes the age thing different. And that's why you can see some movement there. Because, for example, background checks. Almost none of the gun crimes in America are committed by people who evaded a background check. They either have totally illegal guns that they bought from some guy in the trunk of a car, which, by the way, more people died in Chicago last weekend than died in that horrific shooting in what is a typical weekend in Chicago, because America's real gun crime from a volume standpoint is gang on gang, moron on moron gun fights, in crime in urban areas. Those are handguns, not long guns. They're not legally purchased. You can have a bazillion laws. And so that's the argument, whether it's right or wrong, that's the argument gun rights defenders say. You want to punish the law abiders by making us hop through hoops, but you won't go into downtown Chicago and put a teenage kid in jail for 10 years for possessing a gun. You start enforcing the gun laws we have, then we'll go. Like I said when we started, it's about trust. Nobody trusts each other on the issue of guns or abortion in America.
Do you have a gun?
That keeps them apart.
Do you have a gun?
Yes, I have a handgun and I have a long gun, a shotgun.
And training for that?
None. My dad, growing up, I grew up in the rural South, so we did a lot of hunting, and so that's where I got my first gun when I was 10.
Do you have to have a license for that?
No license required. Now, it depends on what you do. Wow. Like with the handgun, if I ever took it somewhere, some places you'd have to have a license, some places you would not. But the fact is, I own the guns. I can't even remember the last time I fired one of them. But it's how I grew up. I grew up with a shotgun.
Do you take them with you when you go out?
No, nothing. That's what I'm saying. I'm the worst example. The people that I know who are serious about it, they frequently will have their gun with them when they go out to eat. And you're in a restaurant, there's a guy and he has a pistol on his belt and you don't even know he's there. And in some states, it's called constitutional carry. There's no requirement to have a license. In other places like New York, that would absolutely be a
Isn't
problem.
this interesting? I just got this in. Americans, total number of gun violence deaths this year so far, nigh on 20,000. Homicide, murder, unintentional, 8,500. Suicide, 10,500. Americans.
Suicides are where the deaths are. Suicides are 2/3 of the deaths. So
Americans are dying at 20,000 per half year. That's 40,000 deaths. That's 800 a week? That's frightening. Can I ask you very quickly, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Breaking news in terms of Ukraine today. 2 British fighters captured in Ukraine, detained in April by Russian forces, don't know if you've heard this, held in the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic, breakaway region in the east, have been sentenced to death by a court that is not recognised in a country that is not recognised. People are, you know what happens with news. People are like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? People are sort of calm. Why would we be diplomatic with him? What would be an American perspective of that? Do you see this situation changing, this war?
Americans absolutely will rise up if they see an American being treated what they think of as unfairly, etc. I mean, think about Benghazi, the reaction we had. Yeah. I mean, the guys who were there to defend the consulate, that was literally their job, to defend the consulate. And people were outraged because the military didn't do its part, the Obama administration didn't do its part, etc. So when you drop a drop of American blood, it changes the math for American politics, at least for a while. But, we have no attention span. We barely know that there's anything outside the American borders. The foreign policy is not our strong suit
Is Ukraine a big story in America or not?
It was front page right after the invasion, and I was impressed. It was front page for several weeks. It's now moved back. Usually, if you're watching the nightly news and there's an hour-long program, it's usually in the second or third segment. That's where it's moved. Some of the states that had bans on Russian booze to show solidarity with Ukraine, the Russian-labeled booze is back. Maybe not the Russian-produced, but there's almost no Russian booze in America anyway. So the symbolic move, the symbol's now been set aside for a stiff drink. We're back at the I'd rather have a stiff drink phase for foreign policy in the United States. And that's just the way this country is. And once again, is it good? Is it bad? On the one hand, when we do get involved internationally to try to do good, it seems to make you Europeans annoyed. And then when we sit back and say, well, mind your own business, that seems to annoy you too.
Yeah, we get annoyed by lots. Very quick final question. We talked repeatedly about Biden. Boris Johnson surviving a vote of no confidence earlier in the week, ramping up. What's America's response to Boris Johnson? Do they not care? They're not bothered. They don't know who he is, do they, to be honest?
Not a lot. You do definitely have people on the right here who, like his style, his flair. But the people that I read say he's on his last leg, that it was not a killing blow, but it was a crippling blow. And like those deer you were showing in your news at the top of the hour getting swept away by the river, he's probably not going to make it to the other side.
It'd be interesting to see who lasts longer, him or Biden. Listen, I really appreciate it. You are my favourite guest that ever comes on. And if you're asked to do breakfast again, get out of bed. I'm trying to build a career for you, Graham.
Not a chance.
Get out of your lazy American bed, man. What are we doing? 17 minutes past 6, Talk TV Drive. 6, Talk Radio Drive, live from the Talk Radio studios. We're here till 7 o'clock tonight. Tom Newton-Dunn with the news desk from 7, Piers Morgan uncensored from 8. Yeah, we're back with the talk myself. Mike Graham as well, live from 9 o'clock tonight. Whatever you want to talk about in the next, 40 minutes? 0344 499 1000, text to 87222. Jezza, if you are British and go grab a gun to fight against Putin and get caught, what do you expect? Which bit of taking a huge risk did these so-called soldiers not understand? It might be a sham, but it's not a shock, says Chris in Newbury. Hello to Mac, who says, Jez, the UK is a basket case. Pop over to our house in Italy for a break. My wife, Enza, is the best cook in the world. Balmy evenings, drinking wine, chilling out, relaxing. Our lad Daniel topping up your drinks. Don't bring Dave, he's not invited. Brilliant. We love you, Mac. We've been invited to Italy without Dave. Let's go to the phone lines. Anton's in Dorset. Hello, mate. You're on Talk TV Drive.
How are you doing? Yeah, the idea of guns. I mean, this is a lovely country. I can sleep on the beach at night time. Nobody bothers you. Sleep in the park. If we legalise guns in this country, slowly but surely, we'll end up like America. Everybody carries guns out there.
I don't think they'll ever legalise guns in England. Do you?
Hope not. I've got friends who've moved over from South Africa, and they move over from South Africa, for example, because people here are not carrying guns. They feel a lot safer.
I think the thing about America is, and we've talked about it a lot on this show, about how, you know, that Constitution, the amendment in 1791 gives you the right to do this, that and the other, to defend yourself. I think the outrage, the absolute outrage when those horrific images first came from Texas was that, you know, a kid of barely 18 can walk into a shop and can buy 2 semi-automatic rifles, whether he is deranged, needs help, whatever. The fact that that facility is there. But Mike Graham just put it really well. He said these people will get these guns. There are 400 million guns in America. I think the horse has already bolted. I genuinely mean that. I was quite moved by talking to a lot of people from England who have guns, and the controls are so much better and so much more organised, and I think that's important in England. I don't think there'll ever be a case where they're legalised willy-nilly, where people don't have to have those important background checks or have a licence or be controlled in terms of using them. Let's go to Hartlepool. Brendan, you're on Talk TV Drive. How are you, pal?
All right, how are you?
I'm good. What would you like to say?
It's about the price of fuel, and how it's approaching £2 a litre. I'm fairly old, and I passed my driving test in 1977.
Did they have cars then?
Yes, just. Yeah. The price of a gallon of petrol was 70p, and a gallon of diesel was 50p. And all my life, diesel's been less expensive than petrol. True. However, that changed when the government said, let's everybody get diesel. So they thought they'd get put the price up. Now diesel is more expensive than petrol. I am sure that we have enough oil in the North Sea to meet our needs of our fuel. It's part of Boris's green agenda, or the establishment's green agenda. They want rid of hydrocarbons-powered vehicles. So that's what this is all about. Everybody's rushing out to buy electric. I'm sure if they wanted to, they could reduce the price. They could pump more oil out of the North Sea and refine it. It's got nothing to do... Well, it might have a bit to do with Russia, but in the main, no, it's not. It's part of their green agenda. That's what the price is.
I'm quite interested by this, because this whole political scenario, right, with Johnson at the moment, there's about 3 things, right? 3 things and 3 things only that most people who voted for him, or most people who would, appear to be Conservatives would want. They want tax cuts, right? That's what they want. And they want the green levy dropped. Now, people will say, oh, it's because of his wife, it's trying to appease all the people. I don't know anybody who doesn't think that that levy should be scrapped to save people money, and the national insurance hike reduced. I don't understand. Now, I sit here and I say to myself, Johnson, if you want to carry on, you're going to have to do this. Is he going to do it? I've absolutely no idea, but I don't disagree with you.
Well, obviously, I'm Hartlepool. It's the first time we've ever had a Tory MP in my life that I can remember. Well, the last one was 64, but since we've always been Labour. It was brilliant when we voted for our Jill Mortimer. But he's dropped the ball. I mean, he hasn't done anything about the Northern Ireland. He hasn't done anything about the dinghy divers crossing the beach, and he hasn't done anything about the inflation. That's what he should be doing. Except, but you know, it's I'm quite annoyed he's saying he's a Tory, because he's not really a Tory.
I think that, interestingly, if you speak to traditional Tory voters, genuinely, I mean this, they will say that the biggest problem with Boris Johnson is not Partygate, right? Not Partygate. It's a fact that he's not doing the things that the Tories wanted. That this is a man who suddenly is finding many pounds, billions of pounds, but, you know, has forgot to say we'll pay it back. And I don't know about you. I follow it as best as I can. It just seems at the moment, Brendan, it's one problem after another. It doesn't seem to get any better at all, does it? I mean, it really doesn't.
I feel a bit sorry for him that way, but a lot of it's his own making. That's the problem, isn't it?
What I don't get as well, pal, is the foresight. I talk about it every night on the show, because here's the thing, right? You know, it's everything. It's cost of living, it's inflation, it's petrol. I mean, today, 100 quid to fill your car. What about small business? What about lorry drivers, haulage drivers, taxi drivers? How are they going to make a living?
Well, you're right. But, well, what they're going to do is they're going to put the prices up and pass it on to us. That's how it works. I mean, that's just as simple as that.
Listen, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you, Brendan. Really appreciate it. Don't mean to cut you off too quickly. You want to go to Cambridgeshire. Phil, you're on Talk TV Drive. How are you, pal?
Yeah, happy, very happy, and happy to hear and speak to you.
Oh, what a nice man. We've only got a couple of minutes, but go for it. What would you like to say?
About the NHS.
Yes.
Everybody's banging on about them. My experience today, I phoned my surgery at 8:30 this morning.
Mm-hmm.
I was offered 2 appointments, one at 9:15 and one at 9:50.
Amazing.
I took the 9:50 one today, and I was in front of the doctor at that time. And I'm truly amazed at all the people shouting about them when you can get service like that.
I will say this, and I've said it repeatedly. I think the NHS as a concept, fantastic. I think the people that work there are angels, men and women, angels. And the truth is that if you fall over, have a heart attack, break a leg, get an ambulance, that's what you want. The fact of the matter is, yours is a great story, Phil, and I'm delighted. There are many who will have bad stories. That video yesterday saying a nurse saying to an A&E department, listen, you're 13 hours at a minimum, I'm going to go home and sleep and I'll come back and you'll still be sat here. That's the reality. For me, and I can't get into a huge debate, Phil, because I haven't got much time, there's just a lot of mismanagement, a lot of money that is spent on the wrong things. I think the system does not, I'm afraid, look after the people who need looking after. I think there are too many loopholes. But in essence, as a body, tremendous. And I'm glad you had a good experience. And thanks for making it Talk TV. Tell your friends, all right, pal? We're here every day.
Yeah, will do.
Good man. Thank you, Phil in Cambridgeshire. Very nice man. A positive NHS story. I just want to make that point. You know, it's not a case of sitting here slagging the NHS off, but over the years, what was brilliant has become not so brilliant, and we absolutely have a right as taxpayers in this country to say, what are we paying for? It's a black hole of money. We're not getting the service we need when we need it. Seemingly other people are. 6:30 headlines on the way. I'm very, very excited. I've got some pop stars next. They're going to make me feel very, very old. If you'd like to be on between now and 7 o'clock, as ever ahead of the news desk, 0344 499 1000. That's the number you need. We'll get your calls on. This is Talk TV Drive.
I'm Ian Collins, and you're watching Talk TV, the home of straight talking. What makes me angry? People who own reptiles make me angry. Why would you own a snake when you live on the 14th floor of a flat in Maidstone? I mean, that's just ridiculous. On a more serious level, what makes me angry? The middle-class intelligentsia, the kind of Guardianista characters that purport to walk in the shoes of ordinary people that actually haven't got a clue what it's really like.
This is Talk TV News.
Good evening, I'm Zora Suleiman. 2 British men who were captured by Russian forces while fighting in Ukraine have been sentenced to the death penalty. Aidan Aslin and Sean Pinner were detained in April. They're accused of being mercenaries, but their families insist they were in Ukraine's military. Well, the government say they are deeply concerned with the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss calling it a sham judgment with no legitimacy. The Prime Prime Minister has insisted it's time to stop spending and start cutting taxes. Speaking in Blackpool this afternoon, Boris Johnson urged the public to pull together through the cost of living crisis.
But when a country faces an inflationary problem, you can't just pay more and spend more. You have to find ways of tackling the underlying causes of inflation. If wages continually chase the increase in prices, then we risk a wage price spiral.
Well, it comes as the RAC says it is a truly dark day for drivers, as the cost of filling an average family car with petrol has exceeded £100 for the first time ever. Fears of widespread travel chaos across the UK has now intensified as 3 more rail companies announced plans to strike later this month. Train drivers from Hull Trains, Greater Anglia and Croydon Tramlink will walk out in separate disputes over pay. It's as up to 50,000 RMT union members will stage the biggest British rail strike since 1989 later this month. And Prince Louis's adorable antics during the Platinum Jubilee has been blamed on sugar highs. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge's youngest son stole the hearts of the nation as he pulled naughty faces. Well, that's all for now. We'll have more later this evening.
Friends, 28 minutes to 7 o'clock. We're live across the UK. Talk TV Drive live from the Talk Radio studios. This is JK banging his pen till 7 o'clock. The news desk with Tom Newton-Dunn, sounding fantastic. The day's news from 7. Piers Morgan, uncensored, live and exclusive from 8 o'clock. I don't know what he's got on tonight because nobody's told me, but it's well worth a watch, I promise you, my friends. And from 9 o'clock, the talk is back. Myself and Mark Graham. Who's Mark Graham? Mike Graham, the legend that is Mike Graham, on tonight with me from 9 o'clock. To the phone lines, 0344 499 1000, ahead of an iconic pop duo who are very, 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 very popular but can't work out a Zoom. Gareth in Huddersfield. I hope it's Huddersfield. Gareth, you're on. What do you want to say, pal?
Hi, Jeremy. Pleasure to talk to you. I was just ringing about this whole American gun debate thing. I spent formative years of my life in Africa, Southern Africa, Rhodesia and South Africa. And as part of that, had to do military service like most white males did, as soon as you left school. And I think the reason why a lot of people owned guns, and we didn't have anywhere near the problems the Americans do. And I think that was because we were trained, brought up to use weapons and respect them. And private life outside of the military, if you wanted to own a weapon, you had to pass checks beforehand and be licensed before you could even take delivery of a firearm from a dealer.
And that's the point. I mean, that story in Texas last week centred on a kid basically, literally, 2 days past his 18th birthday, who can walk into a shop, a store, I suppose they call it, ridiculous, and buy 2 semi-automatic rifles, and whether he's got issues or not, the ability for him to be able to do that before he can drink or drive, and he can create, 21 deaths. That's what's wrong with it. I don't understand. I understand about America. I understand that, the Second Amendment in 1791 said Americans should have the right to defend themselves. But that was a law made hundreds of years ago. This is now. And surely if you are allowing those guns without background checks, without training, without licensing, without anything, if you're allowing them on the streets and there's 400 million of them, you're asking for trouble, aren't you?
Yeah, certainly. I can see both sides of the story, I think. I fully support their right to own weapons and be able to defend themselves. But on the other hand, I can see why the gun lobby might object to checks being put in place, because it almost kind of opens a door to creeping restrictions on gun ownership.
Well, you can understand why the politicians in America aren't happy about, going against the gun lobby, because they pay for them. That's Senator Ted Cruz that we saw on television got $300,000 last year from the NRA. Ridiculous. Listen, I've got to move on. Gareth in Huddersfield, thank you very much indeed. 0344 499 1000. Next up, we're joined by an iconic pop duo. By the way, they were formed in 1985, but they finally worked out what a Zoom is, whose debut single Heartache reached #2 in the charts. That's when you could buy records, because being as old as I was 20 when they formed, that's how old I am. Their friendship began on the way to a Wham rehearsal, and now they're back with a brand new look and a book about their lives and long friendship. Dave's very excited. Pepsi and Shirley, welcome to Talk TV Drive. How are you?
Hi, Jeremy. How are you?
Hi. How good do you two look? Honest to God.
We know how how to do Zoom. We do know
Who couldn't?
I could. Technology. I hate technology like this.
So Shirley, well, you've got men around you, other women around. What went wrong? Look, I'm pretending that I know. I can't even honestly.
Listen, all the men are not around. They're working.
Are they?
Yeah, they're out working, and I'm left here to do. Yeah. So that's all I can say.
You're doing all the hard work, right? That's the truth, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the truth.
When you look back, seriously, I mean, 37 years, wham, and everything you've seen and you've done, you look at the world now, all right, now the album in 87, change in 1991, why a book now? Why not just slide, like me, into obscurity quietly? What's going on, ladies?
Well, why do you want to slide into obscurity? You know, I'm one of those people. I could sit with you, Jeremy, and I want to know your childhood. I want to know everything about you. Once you've listened to someone and talked, heard about their childhood, their upbringing, their relationship with their family, their friends, their career, it's so interesting. So anyone can write a book. Yeah, it's not a big deal. But Pepsi and I have got such a lovely story to tell because it's fame, friendship. There's just a lot more to it, maybe.
It's a lovely...
And now, hold on, I have to interrupt there because showing our age, we've got pictures. We don't have it on our phones, so we've got images, we've got pictures.
You have to scan pictures.
That's what inspired us.
What, real pictures? So the book...
Real pictures.
So are they in black and white? Because the book's called It's All in Black and White. Who decided it? Who rang up who and said, we should do this? We're being offered a few quid. Have you been mates, right? Since it all... since the pop thing went quiet. I mean, are you mates? Have you stayed in close contact?
Of course we have. Our friendship is the core of everything.
We wrote a book. We're mates.
Right.
Jeremy, read the book, and then you'll know we are mates.
Well, I wish you'd have sent me one. Right. Who's the dominant?
You're going to be sent one, and you're going to read it because it's going to make you feel even older.
I don't know why I was about to ask who the dominant one is, Shirley. You can see that, can't you? So right. Quick fire questions. Who's the bossy one in the relationship?
Both of us.
Oh, this is this.
More.
Right, who moans more than the other?
We don't moan.
Oh, for God's sake!
Like you.
Come on, you do.
We prevent moaning.
The thing about this book is all steeped in positivity. I can't even say the word positivity. Jeremy, Mr. Kyle. The thing about it, yes, the thing about the book is that it inspired us to write it due to all these wonderful pictures that we've got. It was through COVID time. We would talk on a regular basis. And then we realised, you know what, we've got a lot to share about our past, where we are, all the things that we've been through. We've been through a lot of adversity, lots of highs, lots of lows, and we wanted to put it in a book. There you go.
Right, OK, then, let's try a different tack. What's the best place you ever visited when you toured? Separately, one at a time.
Australia.
America.
See, you don't agree about everything.
Oh, I think I changed my mind, America.
Oh, Jesus. Right, separately again, because you talk over each other. What do you think of music nowadays, Shirley?
Confusing.
I love that word. Loud, my dad said before he passed. Pepsi?
It can't decide about itself. It's not one thing or another.
It's not as... to me, I'm getting old, but it's not as authentic as it used to be. What's the one thing that you love about the other? We'll start with you, Pepsi. What do you love most about Shirley?
Shirley is the person that makes me laugh. She's very funny and she makes me laugh every single time. I love her for
Mrs.
that.
K, what about Pepsi?
Oh, my God. The most warm-hearted, trusting, caring, lovable person ever.
You know what the next question is? Shirley, what's the most annoying thing about Pepsi?
I have to tell her about 20 times what we will be doing.
That's age.
Because I am the bossy one.
Oh, that's
age.
That's age.
This is Pepsi, it's all right, let's do this. And, oh, I'm not sure, Shell. She always says, I'm not sure. But,
Pepsi, what's the most annoying thing? What's the most annoying thing about your partner?
Initially, she is bossy, but what I do is I just let her ride. And then she sort of softens, and it's lovely. There you go.
It's extraordinary, actually. It's not extraordinary, right? It's not
normal.
Is it normal, right, in this business to have friends after 40 years? For some,
because we're normal.
Yeah, no, and that's absolutely right. I mean, Shirley, to be fair, I mean, yours is a showbiz steeped family. I mean, my great desire growing up was to have a cape like the Spandau Ballet lads had. I mean, I thought that would be the coolest thing. Not only Martin Kemp, of course, but a lot of people, and please don't be upset by this, would only know you now as Roman's mum. I told somebody you were coming on, they went, oh my God, that's Roman Kemp's mum.
Yeah, and that's fine by me. I'm happy with that. I'm proud to be his mum.
You'd actually look really bad in a cape. I actually can't see you in a cape. I don't think it'll be a good look for you. I think it'll be more of a ruffled shirt.
Where's this come from? I don't like your glasses. I've been really nice to you. What's the matter with you, woman?
Well, I can take it. I can take criticism. Obviously, you can't.
I can't. On a serious note, the book, the friendship, the story you have to tell means so much and is important for both of you. Just to sum up in one line each, what's the most... Why now? Why now at this moment specifically? Pepsi?
Oh, go on.
Why not? I mean, for us, we had a lot of experience being in the pop industry, life experiences, and there was a time a few years ago where everyone wasn't doing anything at all, and we decided to share our life with folks out there, and it's actually a very encouraging book.
I've got 30 seconds.
Adversity makes you stronger. There you go.
Would you rather read a book written by a 21-year-old or an older lady who's had a lot more experience?
I know what I'd like, the older experienced ladies' book. Ladies, thank you so much indeed. We really appreciate it. The book, it's all in black and white. Pepsi and Shirley, this is Talk TV Drive. My friends, so the news desk, I've told you from 7, Piers Morgan, I've told you from 8, the talk from 9, and Kev O'Sullivan in for James Whale tonight. He says, join me on talk tonight, rocketing petrol prices, nanny state plan to ban cigarettes, make it illegal or let people smoke, the UK soldiers facing a Russian squad execution in Ukraine. He is on from 10 o'clock tonight, the brilliant Kev O'Sullivan. Yes, I don't know who sent this at all. Jez, it's not just Partygate. If people had money in their pockets, there would be no complaints about any of that, including about MPs. We'd be getting on with our lives, but right now it's so hard, it's not great, and people are wound up. The problem we've got is, who is this? Lynn from Stones. It's not just Boris, it's the whole Conservative Party. They are not Conservatives. You might as well go and vote for the Liberal Party or the left side of the Labour Party. That is the truth, the right side. Jez, the only people carrying guns in the UK are criminals. Yeah, that'd be true. Jez, we now have a two-party system in the UK. We have Labour and the Greens. The only choice at the moment is what colour to vote for. The yellow Greens, Lib Dems, the green Greens, blue Labour, previously known as the Conservatives, or the standard commie red Labour. I think you'll find that's 3 colours. 0344 499 1000 to the phone lines. Peter is in Coventry. Peter, good evening. Welcome to Talk TV Drive.
Well, I'd like to go on the immigration thing.
Hold on a minute. You could say good evening.
Oh, good evening, sir.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Lovely to have you in Coventry. That's a place, isn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Brilliant. Was, yeah. Go on.
Well, I've lived in Coventry all my life. I'm 90 years old.
90?
And worked in Coventry all my life.
So you didn't get sent to Coventry then?
No, I didn't get sent to Coventry. I was born in Coventry. Yeah. Anyway, my biggest gripe is immigration. The NHS is swamped by it because of the immigration situation. And all these nanny state stuff like smokers, drug takers, alcoholics, you know, overweight people are all clogging up the system. And they're all taking stuff out that they haven't paid into, especially on the immigration. I can look out of my front window and I can see 3 setups, businesses, that are not in the system. They're all illegal businesses, from scrap metal to car repairs, etc.
I have to say I talked about this yesterday, Peter, and what I love about Talk TV is the ability to talk about stuff like this without being ostracised. I talked about the National Health Service yesterday, and I'll repeat what I feel today, because it's exactly on a line with you. I believe that it's one of the greatest inventions in the modern world.
It was.
I will get there. I'm with you. I'm not 90. I sound it. But the truth of the matter is, and actually people who are 90... need to be heard as much as people of 19. It does my head in. I've talked before about the impact my old man, who died last year at 87, had on me. The NHS was one of the greatest inventions in the modern world. The fact that you could be helped medically and looked after in need, I think, says an awful lot. However, whether people like this or not, and they don't like it, but it's truth, the NHS now is run by inefficient, idiotic people who waste money on rubbish, absolute rubbish. We don't have we need more doctors and nurses, and we waste money on rubbish, meetings, conferences, reports, whatever else. The other thing that matters is that whether it's immigrants or it's people who haven't paid in, it strikes me, and you've talked about obese people, you've talked about people with drink and drug problems. Of course, you can say that. There are some who definitely need help. But unfortunately, we live in a state now whereby people can take advantage of the National Health Service.
Precisely.
Clogging up is absolutely right. And what riles me, I know I always get accused of using my parents as an example, but my mum was going to have to wait 4 years to have her hip done. She's dead, by the way. And if I hadn't have been able to afford to have it done for her, she'd have waited. This woman paid in for her whole life to the NHS, paid her stamp, as she used to say it was called, and doesn't get anything back. Of course the older generation are going to be hacked off. Why would you not be hacked off?
Well, because there's too many people not paying anything, and they could be paying, they should be paying, but they're running illegal businesses and there's no check on them. I can, as I said, I can look out of my front window and see 3 illegal...
All right. Let me put something to you that all the do-gooders will now send me messages about, right?
Yeah,
What would you say...
Full of them.
What would you say... people who say, come on, this is the United Kingdom, having a free health service means as a nation of morality and care, we should be helping people out. What would you say to that?
I agree with it, but I've had 3 years of living hell due to immigration, due to neighbours. I've had Latvians, Romanians, Lithuanians, all at it.
What, none of them are good people, you're saying?
Yeah, and nobody, the biggest problem is, nobody will do anything about it. They treat me as if I'm a foreigner. It's almost as if, because I'm British, and I've been all my life, born in Coventry, as I said, worked in Coventry, and this, I'm treated like I'm the foreigner.
I must say one thing, and I've always tried to be really straight. I was pleased when immigration could be discussed starting at, 2 elections ago, because I think it's been the subject that a lot of people want to talk about. I rail against... Of course we want to help people, absolutely. And I think, I said it yesterday, I think when the United Kingdom did what it did for the Ukrainian people, which was to literally open our doors to people escaping war-torn countries, I think that said everything about the British people. But at the same time, and maybe not, you're 90, you can use whatever language you want, maybe put slightly differently, I will never accept that there is not a difference between an illegal immigrant and a refugee. I do not believe that people being housed in tents in war-torn France, I'll just leave that thought there, should be able to come to this country and, before people jump up and down, take stuff away from people who are in dire need. And certainly, Pete, in terms of what people are going through at the moment with the cost of living crisis, I think that exacerbates it, and I think people get more and more angry, and I think that they look at what other people are getting, and I don't want to get into a debate about, you know, those words. I understand what you're saying. I want to help as many people as I can, and it's a bit like charity, but unfortunately, probably right now, it has to start at home.
I've been watching you all afternoon, right? I quite enjoy your programme. I think it's brilliant. But the problem is, getting somebody here. Nobody will come to this house and look at the situation I've been put into.
Let me do something a minute. I want you to put the phone down. I want you to listen to the next caller, OK? Will you do that now? Can we do the callers together? Oh, yeah. I'll tell you what, Pete, stay there. Stay there. We're going to do this together. David's in Merseyside. Hello, David.
Hello.
You're on, David.
That guy you've got, he's quite a racist, isn't he?
Can you slow down a minute? What did you say?
He's a racist.
Peter, apparently you're a racist.
Yeah, well, he's not living in here where I am.
One at a time. What did you say, David in Merseyside? What? David?
Yeah?
Why is he a racist?
The way he talks. He hates everyone. He hates foreigners and everything. And he's probably a Brexiteer as well, isn't he?
What's being a Brexiteer got to do with being a racist? Being a racist is fundamentally wrong.
Don't like foreigners like you.
Can I beg your pardon?
Don't like foreigners like you.
Who said... What, are you accusing me of something now?
Yeah, you don't like foreigners.
I tell you, I like everybody, but I will say this. We need to understand in this country, there are people in this country who are suffering, who don't understand why people can come to this country and get the services ahead of those who have paid in. That is not racist. Peter, respond.
They're still not paying in. That's what's getting me. They're not even working in this country. They're working in this country, but they're working illegally. They're not in the system paying taxes and national insurance and all, etc.
Right, that's a balanced argument. How is that racist, David? Answer that without one line. Go on, answer it.
Three firms you're on about. I'm looking out your window. Have you any proof?
So you've got nothing to answer him with. He's making the point, isn't he?
It's not evidence.
I don't think... I tell you what I want to say to both of you, actually. I'm going to finish those calls. I'm going to say this. I don't think it's about the colour of your skin in any which way. I don't think it's about your colour, your caste, your creed or your religion. In this country right now, there is a cost of living crisis that is cutting deep, right? And all I would say is that I think there's an awful lot of people who have worked hard all their lives. Jam's my favourite people, you know, just about managing. Who... whether they look at politicians or they look at RMT union chiefs on £125,000 who can't get a doctor's appointment, who can't see a bloody dentist, who can't get an operation, who have never been on benefits, and look at a lot of people who maybe are on benefits. Some, yes, of course, want jobs, but others have been there long term. And I think people's frustration, like Peter, is understandable, right? You know, that 90-year-old, let me just say to David in Merseyside, he has every single right to an opinion, right? I don't think he hates people. I think he hates the situation that this country has found itself in. And it comes down to the very simple fact that we should want to try and help as many people as possible. But unfortunately, at the moment, it's really, really hard for us to help ourselves. That, I think, is the point that he was trying to make. I appreciate all the calls. David in Merseyside, Peter in Coventry in the West Midlands.